Hey guys, tonight we saddle up under a wide Mongolian sky, where the sun has just begun to slide behind the rolling horizon. You're squinting into the dry wind, reins in hand, with nothing but steppe grass and pale blue mountains ahead. Your mission? To deliver a letter, one humble scroll sealed with wax and dust, though it might shift the fate of an entire province. The horse under you isn't thrilled about this arrangement. It's the third one you've ridden today. The previous two are resting back at their yam stations. Those humble pit stops dotting the Mongol Empire like beads on a necklace. You, however, don't get a break. Because you, brave courier, are part of the most fearsome, most impressively boring mail system the medieval world has ever known. And here's the fun part. You probably wouldn't last more than 2 days doing this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start your ride with sand grinding in your teeth. The wind is relentless, one of those dry, low-screaming gusts that seems to carry gossip from the next province over. Your coat, stiff with days of sweat and occasional yak butter, does little to keep out the cold that descends each evening. You're just outside Kharkiv, the imperial capital at the heart of a sprawl so vast, the empire clocks mail routes in moons, not miles. The letter tucked inside your sash is addressed to a military commander somewhere east of Lake Baikal. It's sealed in oil-rubbed cloth, then bound in waxed silk, then shoved in a pouch that smells faintly of garlic and horsehair. It might contain troop movements, it might contain marriage arrangements, it might just be a passive-aggressive grocery list from one Khan to another. You don't ask. Your job is to ride relay style for as long as it takes. And if your horse dies under you, well, that's what yam stations are for. You change mounts every 2 miles, ideally. If the station hasn't burned down, or moved, or been commandeered by a travelling dignitary with a taste for fermented mare's milk and disdain for couriers like you. Out here, on the steppe, time stretches like hide in the sun. You ride by sun angles and wind direction. The shadows of cloud herds gallop alongside you. There are no roads, just tracks worn smooth by generations of hooves and desperate urgency. And here's where it gets weirdly relaxing. You're alone, truly alone. For hours at a time, it's just you. The soft thud of hooves on hard-packed earth, and the occasional distant eagle spiraling overhead. You count hills. You sing badly to stay awake. You wonder if that clump of rocks is a wolf. It isn't. Probably. Historians still argue whether Mongol mail couriers carried standardized military-grade equipment, or just whatever they could loot or barter along the route. What's agreed upon is that most were issued a small bow, a quiver of arrows, and enough dried meat to keep a camel cranky for days. But even with arms, you're not a warrior. You're something stranger, a fragile lifeline threaded across hostile terrain. The Empire's nervous system, a blur of motion carrying orders, dreams, and disappointments from one end of the known world to the other. And while most empires relied on couriers, the Mongols took it to another level. Their system, the Yam, wasn't just fast, it was obsessive. At its peak, the Mongol Empire stretched from Korea to Hungary. That's over 9 kilometers of territory. And yet, somehow, a message could be sent from Karakorum to the Caspian Sea in just a few weeks, all without the help of Google Maps or even a proper compass. Your horse snorts, tossing its head. Ahead lies your first relay stop. A modest gyr, that's a yurt for the uninitiated, circled by a few tethering posts, smoke rising from its flue. You mutter a soft thanks to the wind gods, or maybe just the weather, for not pelting you with hail today. The yam keeper greets you with a grunt and an expression that suggests he's halfway through arguing with his goat. He takes your horse without comment. You trade a barked passphrase, flash your courier paisa, more on that strange little artifact later, and sit cross-legged on a carpet while someone ladles warm broth into your cup. You slurp it gratefully, even though it tastes mostly like boiled sock with a hint of turnip, but it's warm, and that counts for everything right now. Your fingers are stiff, your legs ache, and you know you have another miles to go before you can sleep. But for now, you let your shoulders drop. Outside, a new horse is being saddled. The air is tinged with firewood, manure, and something sharp and minty, perhaps from the herbs burned to drive away bad luck. As you sip your drink, your mind drifts. You wonder what's in that scroll. You wonder who wrote it. You wonder if the recipient will laugh, cry, or throw it into a fire. And then your name is called. Your new horse is ready. You groan, stand, stretch your knees until they pop like twigs, and step back into the dusk. You mount, the scroll tight, against your chest. One relay down, dozens more to go. You ride with the wind now, slicing eastward beneath a sky that's grown too big to notice. There are no cities in sight, no inns, no signposts, just the occasional pile of rocks left by previous riders to mark a good path or a bad memory. The only thing more relentless than the terrain is the purpose stitched into your bones. Deliver the message, no matter what. And here's the part that always surprises people. This wasn't some afterthought. The whole Mongol mail system, the yam, wasn't invented for sweet nothings or dusty tax receipts. It was Genghis Khan's personal brainchild. The man had a surprisingly modern obsession with information. He knew, better than almost any leader before him, that conquest isn't just about swords. It's about logistics, intel, and timing. So he built a nervous system across his sprawling empire, one post station at a time. The yam was a masterpiece of order hidden in chaos. Imagine tiny pockets of civilization strung like lanterns across a wilderness. Each station had food, shelter, fresh horses, and a keeper who answered only to the Khan. And that little metal object hanging from your sash, that's a paisa. It's more than just a nameplate. It's your golden ticket. With it, you can demand supplies, lodging, and a horse. At any station from here to Persia, you can override local chiefs, jump the food queue, and, if you're brave, wake a sleeping noble to ask where the next station is. It's the ultimate VIP pass. Except instead of velvet ropes and champagne, it gets you lukewarm broth and a suspicious side-eye from strangers who have no idea what your message says, but strongly suspect it's going to change something. Genghis issued these paisas in varying levels of authority. Some were wood, others silver or gold. The higher the rank, the faster your horse got saddled, and the more people stopped mid-soup to salute you. There are records of couriers flashing their paisas and getting entire relay stations cleared for their arrival. Others, they just got a biscuit and a backhanded compliment about their boots. Historians still argue whether Genghis truly invented the yam from scratch or refined an older Central Asian relay system that already existed in fragments. Either way, what he created worked far too well for anyone to care about originality. You press on, hooves drumming over dry grass. The wind picks up again, and you lean low, squinting through the grit. In the distance, a ridge rises. Your next goal. You've been trained to recognize ridgelines like this. They often mark natural borders or the edges of provinces. They also make for good ambush spots, which is why your bow stays within reach, even though it's about as accurate as a thrown spoon when you're riding at speed. As you crest the ridge, the view spills out. Valleys, small herds of sheep, and one lonely ger emitting a plume of blue smoke. A yam station, right on time. Your horse is panting hard. You feel every breath like it's your own. The leather saddle beneath you is now fused permanently with your thighs. And yes, you're hungry again. Somehow. Inside the ger, it's warm and dark and smells of onions and animal fat. You crouch near the stove while your replacement horse is prepped. The keeper, a woman with a strong jaw and arms like oxen, eyes your paisa with the practiced indifference of someone who's seen better, worse, and everything in between. She doesn't speak. She hands you a bowl. You eat. The broth has bits of something chewy, meat, hopefully, and something crunchy, bone, probably. It tastes like comfort and survival. You let your mind drift just long enough to remember that you've got 7 more changes to make before dawn. The woman finally speaks, pointing her spoon at your pouch. Important? She asks. You shrug. Aren't they all? She snorts and turns away, muttering something about men who don't say enough and letters that say too much. Outside, your next horse stamps its feet in the cold. You tug your coat tighter, step into the darkness, and mount up again. Night rides are different. The moon lights your path just enough to avoid disaster, but not enough to stop your brain from inventing. Shadows. You start seeing faces in the landscape, trees shaped like sentries, rocks like crouched bandits. It doesn't help that Mongol folklore is absolutely full of steppe spirits, hungry ghosts, and horse demons with too many teeth. There's a particular tale, popular among riders, about a cursed scroll. It's said to carry a name written in ink that vanishes when read aloud. Every courier who's carried it vanished, or went mad, or just forgot how to ride a horse entirely and wandered off into the mountains. You chuckle quietly to yourself and pat your pouch. Not cursed, you whisper, just to be sure. Then again, your horse startles and nearly throws you as a fox darts across the path. So, maybe cursed adjacent. By now your body is one long ache. Your hands are numb. Your brain is syrupy. But the letter remains safe. And that's all that matters. You think of the person waiting on the other end. Do they pace? Do they already know what the message says, having read between the lines of politics and pauses weeks ago? Or will it blindside them? One scroll, one seal, changing everything. For now, it's not your business. You're just the thread. The invisible strand connecting a Khan's will to the outer reaches of his domain. And out here, under the stars, that's somehow enough. The stars overhead feel closer now, less like distant pinholes and more like curious eyes watching your slow, deliberate progress across the darkened steppe. Your breath steams, vanishing instantly, and the air hums, with the sort of silence that only wide, empty spaces can carry. You've been riding for hours, and the cold has begun its slow crawl into your bones. But the horse is steady beneath you, trustworthy, unlike some you've ridden. This one, a sturdy dun mare with a suspiciously intelligent look in her eye, was waiting at your last yam station. She didn't like being saddled, or bridled, or touched, really. But she runs well. And that's all that matters tonight. The Mongols weren't picky about horse breeds, mostly because they didn't need to be. Their small, stocky steppe horses could go for days without water, sleep standing up, and eat grass that would make most livestock weep. You, dear courier, are the weak link in this arrangement. The horse could keep going. You, on the other hand, are considering chewing on your boot leather just for variety. Historians still argue whether these horses were truly the secret to Mongol speed, or just one part of a broader strategy. What's agreed upon, though, is this. Every courier, you had access to dozens, sometimes hundreds, of these equine tanks along the route. They weren't fast in a galloping sense, but they were relentless, built for the long haul, built for boredom, perfect for you. Ahead, the horizon is just a deeper shade of black. You pass a cluster of trees, unusual in this part of the steppe. Their branches creak in the wind like gossiping elders. Somewhere in the distance a wolf howls, not menacing, just present. Like it's keeping tabs on you, maybe curious about the taste of someone who smells like boiled socks and anxiety. You shift in your saddle and reach under your coat to adjust the letter pouch. Still there. Still. Warm against your chest. Its edges have softened with your sweat. You wonder how many other riders it's passed through. Are you the first? The second? The seventh? There's an old Mongol proverb. It's not the message that travels fastest. It's the man who needs it most. You don't quite know what that means at AM in freezing temperatures, but it feels deep, so you let it echo in your head for a while. At the next yam station, you barely remember dismounting. The station keeper, a bent old man with a nose, like a hawk's beak, eyes you up and down before grunting in vague approval. No words are exchanged. He's seen this before. He takes your horse, hands you a chunk of dried meat the size and texture of a sandal, and gestures toward a small, blanket pile near the fire. You sit, gnaw the meat until your jaw aches, and sip water that tastes faintly of metal and pine. You stretch your legs. They creak like a ship in high seas. You smell like a disappointed leather shop. And yet, there's a strange peace to it. You've fallen into rhythm with the road, into the pulse of something bigger than yourself. Each station is a heartbeat. Each horse change a breath. You are the bloodstream of the Empire, flowing east with a packet of intent. The old man nods. Your next horse is ready. No more words. You nod back. The exchange is complete. Outside, the wind has died down. In its absence, the world sounds impossibly still. Even your footsteps seem disrespectful. You mount up, your muscles protesting like grumpy monks, and ease the horse back onto the trail. This section of the route follows an old trade path, one that predates the Empire itself. It's narrow and winding, flanked by boulders that bear ancient carvings, spirals, animal shapes, faces half worn away by centuries of wind. You run your fingers over one as you pass, wondering who etched it. What message were they carrying? Some couriers, it's said, left small symbols along the route to mark their passing. An arrow scratched into bark, a stone stacked atop another. Not as signs for others necessarily, but as proof to themselves that they existed, that they moved, that they mattered. You consider doing the same, but your fingers are too cold to bother. There's a flash on the ridge, a shimmer of white fur. For a moment, you panic. Bandits? But no. Just a lone mountain goat, staring at you like it knows something you don't. The Mongol Empire was not exactly lenient with mail theft. Stealing from the yam was considered treason, punishable by death, and not the quick kind. But the real deterrent wasn't law. It was reputation. Everyone knew the couriers were sacred. To harm one was to insult the Khan himself. Which is why you ride with a kind of invisible armor, an unspoken agreement that whatever you're carrying is too important to interrupt. Still, you keep your bow close. Sacredness is no match for desperation. The night stretches on, the stars shift. You hum softly to stay awake. An old lullaby you heard as a child. Something about a horse that turns into the moon. Your voice cracks. The mare doesn't seem to mind. Eventually, just as your eyelids start weighing more than your thoughts, the eastern sky stains itself with pale blue. Dawn, faint and reluctant, like a candle being lit in a vast cave. You haven't slept. Your limbs tremble. But there's a soft comfort in knowing that the worst of the night is over, that the trail ahead will soon be dusted in sun, that, for now at least, the world is, still turning with you on it. You glance down at the letter again. Still sealed, still secret, still riding. The sun creeps up slow, almost shy, like it knows how tired you are and doesn't want to make a scene. You blink against the growing light, your eyes burning dry from the wind, and the sheer effort of staying open all night. The mare beneath you has shifted from a gallop to a smoother canter now, sensing the day beginning and adjusting her pace accordingly. Horses, it turns out, don't care about postal urgency. They care about grass and not stepping in holes. The land around you glows golden in the early morning. Hills roll like lazy waves, dotted with small shrubs and the occasional marmot that peers out, and upon seeing you, decides immediately that whatever this is, it wants no part of it. You pass a river, narrow and fast, and let your horse drink. The sound of running water nearly undoes you. You sit there for a moment too long, staring into the current like it might carry you away. You've still got 4 more yam stations to go before this leg is done. And this is a good route. In the more remote stretches of the Empire, say, through the Karakum Desert or up into the Altai Mountains, couriers faced worse. Sandstorms, blizzards, and the ever-present danger of having your tent collapse on your face mid-sleep. In those regions, mail riders sometimes had to act like mini-governors, negotiating with local chiefs, calming terrified villagers, even helping enforce laws when needed. You, for now, just need to keep riding. At the next station, you arrive. to a sight that feels surreal after so many miles of emptiness. Music. There's a morankur, a traditional Mongol horsehead fiddle, being played near the fire, the melody haunting and slow. A young man strums it with half-closed eyes, as if dreaming the notes into the air. He doesn't look up as you dismount. The station keeper, his mother maybe, offers you tea brewed with milk and salt. You sip it gratefully. It's not exactly delicious, but it's warm, and it wraps itself around your bones like a second coat. She asks where you're headed. You say east. She nods, as if that answers everything. While your next horse is being saddled, you stretch, arms above your head, joints cracking like ice. You haven't spoken much in the last day. The silence has become a second skin. But here, in this oddly musical yam station, your thoughts feel heavier, slower. You wonder, has the message you carry already been outdated? A battle lost, an envoy turned back, an alliance signed with different ink. The wheels of empire grind on, sometimes faster than even the fastest rider. Historians still argue whether messages ever arrived too late to change a war or prevent a rebellion. Some say the yam was perfect. Others say it was only as good as the man holding the reins. There's another tale, told in whispers, about a courier who delivered a message warning of an invasion, 2 hours after the city had already burned. You tell yourself that won't be you. The next stretch is surprisingly flat. A grassy plain opens wide, and for the first time in a long while, you allow yourself to relax your grip. The new horse, a chestnut with a scar above its left eye, runs smooth as poured milk. You ease into the saddle, your body remembering its rhythm. The letter pouch presses against your chest like a heartbeat. It's not just royal orders that get passed along this network. Sometimes it's diplomatic gifts, rare textiles, ceremonial blades, letters dipped in saffron-scented oil to preserve them. Other times it's grim, casualty reports, prisoner lists, even coded death sentences. And occasionally, it's absurd. There's one preserved record of a courier assigned to deliver. A snowball. Yes, a snowball. Carefully packed in wool and salt, sent from the far northern reaches to amuse a southern noble who had never seen winter. Spoiler, it didn't make it, but it does go to show the lengths people would go just to move a thought from one head to another. You chuckle, imagining yourself as the brave rider of doomed snowballs. And speaking of absurd, there's the matter of Mongol relay station food. Not all of it is terrible. Some stations are near rivers, and the stews there are fresh, even borderline tasty. Others, however, well, let's just say fermented mare's milk, airag, is an acquired taste. One you definitely have not acquired. You've heard stories of first-time riders vomiting off the sides of their horses after chugging a bit too enthusiastically at a greeting cup. A bug lands on your lip. You spit. There's no dignity out here. You start to sing. Not because you're good at it, but because your mind is fraying at the edges, and melody is the only thing keeping it stitched. A marching chant you once heard from soldiers, something about socks, goats, and dying heroically in the mud. It makes very little sense. But then, neither does the job you're doing. You're a letter, a very tired, slightly smelly, two-legged letter with a horse. And for all your discomfort, your exhaustion, your need for an actual bath, there's something deeply calming about the clarity of your task. In a world of chaos, your job is simple. Ride, deliver, repeat. Eventually, you spot the next station. Smoke rises in a careful spiral, and two boys are playing with a makeshift ball outside, kicking it between the legs of an incredibly patient goat. They stop to stare as you arrive, wide-eyed and silent. One whispers something to the other. You pretend not to notice. The station keeper emerges, a woman this time, tall, wrinkled in that dignified, terrifying way that suggests she's not to be trifled with. She inspects your horse, your paisa, your saddle. Then, without a word, she hands you a bowl of soup. You eat on your feet. Ineo. Sun is higher now and the wind has softened. The next leg is uphill, and your new horse is smaller but scrappy. You mount up again, muscles groaning, and set off. Behind you, the children resume their game. Ahead of you, the road continues. Waiting. Endless. And somewhere, someone is waiting too. The road begins to climb. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in that slow, sneaky way that wears on your knees before your brain even registers it. The air thins just a little, and the breeze sharpens. You notice it in your fingertips first. Then your lips start to dry and crack. The horse, small, wiry, grey, doesn't seem to mind. She was bred for this kind of path, mountain-born, sure-footed, smarter than you by several degrees. She picks her way up the ridge with quiet certainty, like she's done it 1,000 times before. Maybe she has. Maybe she was someone else's horse last week. You try not to form attachments. It's easier that way. This is where the landscape starts to change. Gone are the grassy plains of the lowlands. In their place, hard stone, coarse brush, and the occasional pine tree clinging stubbornly to a ledge. Everything feels a little more serious up here. Even the birds look tougher. Historians still debate how high the original yam roots went, how far into the mountain passes, how much vertical hardship was considered acceptable for a state-run message service. Some argue that the highland routes were only used in emergency cases or during warm months. Others point to archaeological traces of permanent relay stations in surprisingly rugged places. What's not debated is how miserable it is to ride a horse uphill for several hours. You start talking to yourself, not philosophically, just narrating. There's a rock. Good. Avoid the rock. Well done. You cheer yourself on like a very underqualified sports commentator. It helps. A little. At one bend in the trail, you see a low stack of stones, deliberately placed. An ovu, a sacred cairn used by Mongol travelers. You dismount briefly, circle it clockwise 3 times, and leave a pebble on top. Not because you're superstitious, just respectful. It doesn't hurt to be on good terms with the mountain spirits. The Mongol postal system, impressive as it was, never really functioned in isolation. It relied on traditions, beliefs, and community trust. Riders might carry a royal seal, but they also needed the goodwill of strangers, station keepers, local herders, and even shamans. A disgruntled villager could sabotage a route just as effectively as a landslide. You saddle back up. The climb continues. A patch of snow appears beside the path. Not much, just a stubborn smear in the shade of a boulder. You stop, touch it. It's real. Cold, soft. You haven't seen snow in weeks, and somehow its presence makes you feel both small and protected, like the mountain is watching over your journey, silently rooting for you. As you reach a plateau, your stomach growls, loudly. The soup from the last station has worn off, and your emergency rations, dried curds and some kind of pickled root that smells like soap, are less than appealing. Still, you chew dutifully. Nourishment over pleasure. You remind yourself that you're lucky. Some couriers didn't eat for days. Others got stuck in snowdrifts and had to share body heat with their horses. You, at least, are still vertical and semi-conscious. There's a story you once heard about a courier who got lost in the mountains during a fog. He followed the wrong ridge and ended up delivering his letter to a clan of reindeer herders who'd never heard of Kublai Khan, or letters, or pants. They fed him mushrooms, braided his hair, and sent him back with a blessing. The message arrived, late, but the courier claimed to have had a religious experience. You don't doubt it. Just after midday, the path levels out. You come across a small shrine, barely taller than your waist. It's decorated with ribbons, bones, and fragments of old tools, gifts to the sky. You stop again, just briefly, and breathe. The silence is different here. Not emptiness, exactly. More like patience. The mountains are waiting for you to move, watching, but never judging. The next yam station is nestled into a windbreak of stone, half hidden by low-hanging pine branches. The station keeper, an older man with 2 missing fingers and a tattoo of a bear on his neck, nods as you arrive. He doesn't smile, but he doesn't frown either. In the language of mountain folk, that's practically a hug. He feeds your horse first, then you. The food is thick and heavy. Barley porridge with a lump of something you choose not to identify. It fills your belly and your heart. You ask about the next stretch. He shrugs. Storm, maybe. Or not. Classic. While your new horse is being prepared, you doze by the fire. Just a little. 10 minutes, maybe. It's enough to fog your thoughts, to make dreams drift through your eyelids like silk. You dream of letters with wings, flying over mountains, laughing. You wake up with ash in your hair. The new horse is tall, black as ink, possibly part demon. It glares at you with eyes that suggest it reads minds and is unimpressed with yours. You swing into the saddle anyway. A deal's a deal. The trail continues along a ridge now, exposed to wind on both sides. Far below, you glimpse valleys painted with forest. Birds wheel in the distance. Maybe hawks, maybe something stranger. You squint and see a dot on the horizon. A rider? Hard to tell. Sometimes riders passed each other on the road. A nod, a grunt, and then gone. No time for stories. The mail doesn't mingle. The black horse snorts and breaks into a trot. You clutch the reins tighter. Somewhere behind you, the wind scatters a few pine needles. Somewhere ahead, the next station waits with tea, a fire, and another letter to carry forward. The empire moves on, and so do you. The black horse runs like it's got secrets to deliver that are even more urgent than yours. It barely tolerates your commands, veering just enough to avoid ledges and boulders, but not enough to suggest it cares whether you stay on its back. You grip with your knees, hunch low into the saddle, and try to make peace with the fact that you are, for the moment, entirely at the mercy of a moody animal with trust issues. The ridge narrows. Wind slices in from the west. Cold, fast, and personal. Your cloak flaps like a flag behind you, and your eyes water until you're not sure if it's from the wind or just life in general. Below, far below, the forest sighs in, waves. You imagine it's whispering, careful, watch your step, try not to die dramatically. After about an hour of this high-wire act, the path drops again, winding in switchbacks down the mountain's flank. You dismount halfway, leading the horse by the reins. It snorts disapproval, but follows. The descent is slow, your boots slipping, in gravel, legs aching with the weight of control. You've never wanted flat ground so badly in your life. Eventually, mercifully, you reach the valley floor. It's like stepping into another world. The air is warmer, the scent of pine replaced by something earthy and damp. A river curls through the valley like a silver ribbon. You hear birds again, real ones, not the vulture-like mountain kind. Something even chirps. You begin to relax, just a fraction, until you realize the valley is riddled with fords. Shallow. River crossings normally, except after rain, they swell. The banks are muddy, the currents stronger than they look, and here you come upon one such ford. About 30 feet across, brown with churned silt, and just deep enough to make you hesitate. Black horse doesn't hesitate. It steps forward, testing the edge. Then, as if insulted by the idea of hesitation, it wades in. You follow, boots sinking ankle-deep into cold sludge. Your breath catches as the current tugs, playful and a little mean. Halfway across, you're wet to the knees. The horse shakes its mane like a diva in a shampoo ad. You mutter a string of words that are not technically profane but would get you side-eyed at a temple. Safely across, you both climb onto solid ground, dripping and disgruntled. The next yam station isn't far, just past a wooded stretch and a rise in the land that conceals a small cluster of yurts. This is not one of the grand stations. No big fire pit or line of spare horses waiting like soldiers. It's more of a side station, a rest and refuel sort of place. A woman greets you, mid-30s maybe, with sharp eyes and flour-dusted sleeves. She's in the middle of kneading dough. You wonder briefly if she ever stops. Without asking, she points you to a stump near the fire, then disappears into her yurt and returns with hot flatbread wrapped in cloth. You take it. You don't speak. You just eat. It tastes like heaven. Historians still argue over how standardized the yam stations really were. Royal decrees described carefully spaced posts with detailed lists of what each should contain. Spare horses, grain, clean bedding, guards. But in practice, it depended. Remote stations were often just kind families paid in grain and goodwill. Some doubled as taverns. Others were run by monks or hunters, and a few, like this one, were little miracles of hospitality tucked into the folds of nowhere. You're offered a cot and take a nap. Not long. Just 40 minutes. Enough to loosen the joints and dampen the dread of the next leg. You wake to the smell of something cooking. Onions maybe, or a rare spiced stew. You're tempted to stay, but the black horse is already waiting, saddled and smug. You saddle up, say thank you, get a half smile in return. The road rolls on. This next stretch is mercifully gentle. Forested paths, narrow but kind. You pass a man walking in the opposite direction with a goat on a rope. You nod. He nods. The goat bleats, unimpressed by either of you. You pass ruins too. Just a corner of wall and some scattered stones now. But once perhaps a guard post, or a hunter's hut. Time is everywhere out here. You don't need a clock. You measure the day in horse hooves, sweat, and how many times you've talked to your saddle. There's an old story riders used to tell each other, part warning, part joke, about the ghost of a courier who missed a deadline and was doomed to ride forever, unable to reach his destination. They say you can hear his hoofbeats at dusk, on roads where no horses are. You listen, just wind, just trees. Maybe. You're next. River crossing is narrow but fast. The black horse balks. You pause, talking low and calm. Something shifts in its posture, maybe respect, maybe boredom, and it crosses without fuss. You realize, too late, that you should have kept your boots out of the water this time. One sock now squelches with every step. And this is why Mongol riders preferred boots lined with felt and dried moss, naturally insulating, quick to dry, and shockingly good at wicking away moisture. You consider pulling off your boot and airing it, but decide against it. No time. The sun is dipping. Evening's coming. Soon you'll need to reach another station before full dark. Riding at night? Not ideal. Too many things like to travel at night. Wolves, bandits, rumors. Some stations lock up after sunset. Others pretend not to hear you knocking. You lean forward, urging the black horse into a gallop. The wind rises behind you like an audience getting to its feet. Trees whip, past in a blur of green and shadow. Your cloak flutters. You feel your pulse sync with the rhythm of hooves. Steady, fast, alive. The yam road curves gently, then opens to a glade. And there it is, a proper station this time. Tall gate, smoke from multiple fires. You even hear laughter. You made it. Just before you dismount, you pat the horse on the neck. It doesn't react, but that's okay. You're not riding for thanks. You're riding because someone, somewhere, wrote something important and trusted that it would arrive. And tonight, it will. You enter the station like a soldier returning from the front, though the only enemies you've battled are geography, time, and your own soggy boot. Still, someone claps you on the shoulder as you pass through the gate. A big man with a beard so luxurious it deserves its own postal rank. He laughs, says something in a dialect you don't quite catch, and points toward a bench near the fire. You sit and melt. The heat from the flames climbs into your bones like it's been invited. For a while, you just listen. The crackle of wood, the low murmur of station hands discussing which mare is in heat, and someone noisily slurping soup from a bowl the size of your face. You get your own bowl moments later, some sort of lamb, stew, thick with root vegetables and a flavor that might be cardamom, or just enthusiastic salt. You devour it. Manners are a luxury for tomorrow. The black horse is taken to the stables. You hear it snort once, then stomp like it's reminding everyone it's still very much the boss. Good. Let it enjoy its rest. Inside the main yurt, the walls are lined with wool hangings and bundles of herbs. There's even a bench to sleep on. Not dirt, not straw, but a real bench. With a blanket. You briefly consider proposing to it. As you ease off your boots and begin to peel off layers of dust and damp, you glance at the other couriers lounging nearby. 2 are napping with their mouths open. One is sharpening a knife while humming a tune that somehow sounds like a lullaby sung by someone very bad at lullabies. You exchange a nod with a woman whose jacket is held together by more stitches than fabric. She's got eyes like cracked amber and the slow, practiced movements of someone who's been delivering imperial orders since before you learned how to hold reins. She doesn't ask what message you carry. Couriers don't ask. But she looks at your travel-worn boots and says, "Snow tomorrow, maybe earlier." You groan. She smiles like that's the point. Historians still debate how accurate Mongol postal forecasts were, whether yam keepers had actual weather knowledge or just assumed every day might be awful and were right often enough to seem wise. Whatever the case, her words carry weight. You resolve to get as far as you can before the sky decides to complicate things again. In the morning, you wake to a sky heavy with bruised clouds. The other riders are already preparing, checking, straps, swapping letters, feeding their horses with that quietly intense focus only people who live by the road ever really master. Your own next horse is lean, tall, and the color of sand. It's got a nicked ear and a white blaze on its nose that looks like a crooked map. You like it immediately. You leave early, with a chunk of bread stuffed into your coat, and a letter, tucked deep into your satchel, wrapped twice in oilcloth, just in case. The road out of this station dips into forest again, pine, mostly, and cedar. You pass through a grove where the trunks are spaced like ancient columns, the forest floor, blanketed with needles. It smells like rain and forgotten prayers. A pair of deer bound across your path at one point. You stop. Watch them vanish into the underbrush. Then you ride on, the hoofbeats softened by the thick, spongy path. You reach a fork. One road hugs. The river. Safe, scenic, and slow. The other cuts over a hill. A shortcut if your legs can handle it, and your horse is willing. You choose the hill. Time matters. The letter in your satchel matters. You climb. The incline is mean, not cruel, not deadly. Just that kind of quiet, constant resistance that makes you question all your life choices. You stop halfway to drink. From your water skin, the water is warm, tastes like leather and resolve. At the top of the hill, you're rewarded with a view. Not a grand postcard kind of view, just a wide, flat stretch of land below, dotted with grazing sheep and small, white tents. A herder waves. You wave back. Connection made, then gone. You descend. The trail flattens, and you begin to think, dangerously, that this day might be easier than the last, that perhaps the universe has decided to cut you some slack. Then you spot the vultures, circling, low. You ride toward them, not out of courage, but curiosity. That's how you find the broken cart. Wood splintered, one wheel gone, its contents scattered like a child's forgotten toys. Empty sacks, some torn cloth, a cracked clay jar. No blood, no bodies, just wreckage. You dismount, investigate. You find footprints, hoof marks, and drag lines. There was a struggle here, or maybe just a mistake on a narrow road. You leave it be, not your job. But you ride faster afterward. You reach the next station by late afternoon. This one is smaller, quieter. A young man tends the fire and offers no conversation. You hand him the token that proves you're a courier in good standing. He squints at it, nods, and gives you a cup of tea. It tastes like burnt hay, but it's warm. As your next horse is being saddled, another dun-coloured creature, with ears like old parchment, you examine the letter you're carrying. You don't open it, of course. That would be unthinkable. But you notice the seal is thicker than usual. Wax layered on wax, pressed deep with the emblem of a falcon in flight. You wonder, and you ride. Evening falls with a soft hiss, like the world exhaling into stillness. You follow the river again, this time with fireflies flickering along the banks. The road is kind, the air cool but forgiving. For the first time in days, you find yourself humming. The dun horse responds with a slight toss of its head as if to say, "Don't get too comfortable. Fair." You round a bend and see the flicker of another station's firelight. Just one more stop tonight. One more bowl of stew maybe, if the cook is generous. One more patch of ground to rest your body. And then tomorrow, you'll ride again. Because letters don't deliver themselves, and the empire never sleeps. You wake before the sun. Not because you're especially disciplined, but because your spine has strong opinions about sleeping on a sloped patch of frozen dirt. You stretch, yawn, and remember, somewhere between dreams and dawn, that you still haven't dried that one sock from 2 fords ago. It's balled up next to your saddlebag, stiff as wood and twice as tragic. Today's horse is a chestnut mare, with a white nose and a look that says she'd like to get going before you start talking to her about your dreams. You respect that. She's already saddled. The station hand, a kid barely old enough to grow a beard, hands you a fresh water skin and a wedge of cheese wrapped in birch bark. You thank him. He shrugs like he's still asleep. The road today follows. A high step, miles of waving grass, wildflowers clinging to the edges, and hills that roll like someone draped a green felt blanket over the bones of giants. Wind sweeps across it in long, whispering gusts. You let the mare find her pace, steady and rhythmic. There's no shade out here, just sky, clouds, and the slow heartbeat of hooves on dirt. Off in the distance, you spot other riders. 2 of them, moving parallel to you, but several miles out. They don't seem in a hurry, could be traders, could be messengers like you. You raise a hand in greeting, but the distance swallows it. There's something about this land that turns every moment into a maybe. Maybe that's a shadow. Maybe that's a trick of wind and grass. Maybe the letter in your bag will change the course of someone's life. Or maybe it's just another order to move livestock from one province to another. Historians still debate the nature of these messages. How many were tactical military instructions? How many were diplomatic missives? And how many were the medieval equivalent of, "Hey, just checking in"? The records, where they survive, are patchy. But we do know this. The mere fact that communication could move at such a pace over such distances made the Mongol Empire feel like a single, living organism. About midday, you come upon a lone ger, a traditional yurt nestled beside a spring. An old man tends a tiny garden nearby, onions maybe, or garlic. He squints as you approach, then waves you toward the water without a word. You dismount. Let the mare drink first, always the horse first, then kneel beside the spring yourself. The water is clear and cold enough to steal the thoughts from your head. You wash your face. It feels like waking up all over again. The old man brings you a bowl of boiled millet topped with something that might be yak butter. You don't ask, you eat. He points to your satchel and makes a gesture, a closed fist, then an open palm. Message? Delivery? You nod. He nods back, satisfied. It's quiet for a while, just the hum of bees and the gentle knock of wind against canvas. You almost doze off on your saddlebag, but the mare whinnies softly and the spell breaks. Time to ride. You thank the old man. He hands you a tiny carved charm on a string. For luck, he says, the only words he'll speak to you. You tie it to your satchel and promise silently to keep it. The steppe road continues westward, rising slightly into a low ridge. From the top, you can see smoke trails in the far distance, station fires, or maybe just a cluster of herders preparing for evening. The mare senses your tension and flicks her ears back in a kind of equine eye roll. You press on. Around mid-afternoon, clouds gather, and not the decorative kind. Big, hungry, bruised clouds that crawl in from the north and rearrange your plans without asking. You've got at least 3 more hours of riding to reach the next yam station. The weather, however, clearly doesn't care about schedules. Rain hits fast. It's not polite rain either. It's the sideways slapping kind that soaks you in seconds and makes every bit of exposed skin feel personally insulted. You tug your cloak tighter and lean forward, urging the mare into a trot. The road beneath you becomes mud. Not the sticky, sink your boot kind, but slick, deceptive mud that tries to slide your horse sideways. Visibility drops. The world becomes water and motion and the sound of squelching leather. You nearly miss the turnoff, but you spot a post, leaning at an angle, half rotted, painted with a faded symbol, a circle crossed by 2 lines. It marks a shortcut, a side path to a shelter used in emergencies. You hesitate, then veer off the main road. The path is barely a path, more like a suggestion, but the mare trusts you enough to follow. Or maybe she just hates the rain more than she fears getting lost. Smart girl. After a mile, you spot it. A half-buried stone building, squat and moss-covered, with a crude wooden door. It was likely a guard post once, now repurposed for travellers like you, who got caught in weather without manners. You tie the mare under, the lean-to. She shakes herself violently, then promptly begins eating whatever grass hasn't drowned yet. Inside, it's dryish. There's an old fire pit. You scrape together enough kindling to start a small blaze, fingers numb and trembling. It catches, and suddenly the world seems less terrible. Your cloak steams beside the fire. You hang your wet tunic over a beam, then curl up against the wall with your satchel as a pillow. The letter inside is safe, dry, sealed, untouched by the storm. You check, just to be sure. Then, because there's nothing else to do, you talk to it. Not a full conversation. You're not that far gone. Just a quiet observation. Hope you're worth it, friend. Outside, the rain drums on the roof like a lullaby with too many verses. You drift. Not quite asleep. Not fully awake. The charm the old man gave you swings from a peg, casting small shadows as the fire flickers. You don't dream. You just float. Tomorrow, you'll ride again. But tonight, for a little while at least, the Empire can wait. You wake in darkness, not the soft velvet dark of midnight with moonlight peeking through cloud gaps, but the deep, woolen black of pre-dawn, the kind of dark that makes you question whether morning is still a concept the sky believes in. The fire's gone to embers. You nudge it gently, coaxing a few sparks with what's left of the kindling. It obliges you with a soft orange glow, just enough to find your boots, which are still damp, and your satchel, which is thankfully not. Outside, the rain has stopped. Mostly. There's a slow drip from the lean-to roof, and the heavy scent of wet earth and tired trees. The mare is awake and waiting, ears perked, coat slick with dew. She snorts once as if to say, "Finally." You saddle up in silence, your breath clouds in the chill. Somewhere nearby, a bird sings one tentative note, then changes its mind. By the time the sky begins to pale, you're back on the road, such as it is. The mud has firmed up overnight. Hoofprints from the previous day's passage still mark the ground. Your own and someone else's. Another courier, or perhaps just a caravan strayed from the main route. You follow them for a while, then lose them at a fork where the mud dried unevenly. The land is different now. Hillier, more wooded. Birch trees line the trail in clumps, their white trunks bright against the gloom. Somewhere beneath the soil, rivers are forming, shifting, whispering secrets to tree roots and gophers. You hum a little to keep yourself awake. A travelling tune, one passed between stations so many times it no longer belongs to anyone. It's about a clever horse and a foolish emperor. The emperor never learns. The horse always wins. About 2 hours in, you come across a shrine, just a small one, wooden, half hidden in a crook of stone, draped in coloured cloth and offerings. Ribbons, coins, a bit of dried meat, still fresh enough to tempt flies. You dismount and place a pebble at the base, because that's the custom. You're not superstitious, but then again, you're not reckless either, especially not on the road. As you mount back up, you notice a tuft of fur snagged on a low branch nearby. Not horsehair, not goat. Something else. Wolves. Could be. You ride faster. Historians still argue whether Mongol postal couriers travelled armed. Some records mention short bows slung under the saddle, while others suggest weapons were discouraged to keep couriers fast, light, and less prone to stopping for heroics. You carry a knife. Not because you're brave, but because sometimes ropes need cutting and apples need slicing. Any wolf that tries to start something better be allergic to sarcasm and cheese rinds. By mid-morning, the sun finally shows up, grudgingly, like a guest late to their own party. It spills gold over the hills, turning puddles into mirrors and leaves into flames. And ahead, just visible on the next rise, is the roofline of another, yam station. You urge the mare forward. This one is different. No fire out front, no friendly dogs barking, no visible movement at all. You slow. Cautiously, you dismount. Tie the mare to a post, fingers on the hilt of your knife, not out of fear, exactly, but wariness with a caffeine deficiency. Inside, the main tent is empty, but not abandoned. A pot still hangs over glowing coals. Bedrolls lie folded in a corner. A half-written message sits on the table, quill beside it, ink slightly dried. You call out. No answer. Then, a cough. You turn to find a young man standing in the doorway, wrapped in a wool cloak, eyes puffy from sleep and a cold that probably dates back to the reign of Ogedei Khan. He mumbles a greeting, then points toward the ledger on the table. You sign your name, leave the token, and accept the cup of fermented mare's milk he offers with the reluctant grace of someone who knows its good manners, even if it tastes like sour dreams and regret. He perks up once he realizes you're a courier on the inner route. He hasn't seen anyone in days. Bandits scared off a merchant train recently, he says, and traffic's been slow. Bandits? You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. They don't bother couriers. Too fast. Too poor. Fair point. Still, you take the time to check your saddlebags more carefully before heading out. Everything's there. The satchel, your supplies, the charm from the old man with the garlic patch, and, of course, the letter. You haven't touched it. Not really, but you feel its weight a little more each day, like it's absorbing the miles, like it's listening. You ride out under a clearer sky. The road descends into a broad valley now, with springy grasses underfoot, and dragonflies dancing in the air like confused aerialists. A herd of antelope crosses your path at one point, pausing to stare at you like you've offended their sense of choreography. You bow slightly. They dash away. You pass the remnants of an old fire ring. Someone camped here recently, probably another courier, maybe a local hunter. The ash is cold, but the circle is neat, the kind that suggests discipline. You take your break beside it, chewing a strip of dried fish and sipping warm water while the mare grazes. You don't talk out loud this time. The valley is so quiet, it feels rude. You notice, during that rest, a line of stones running up the side of a hill. Old boundary markers. Not Mongol, probably older. Tang dynasty maybe, or something even before that. You wonder how many couriers have passed these same stones. How many messages have ridden past, tucked in saddle pouches, never knowing they were crossing centuries with every step. That's the thing about the Yam network. It wasn't just fast, it was recursive, always updating, reusing, threading new routes through old bones. Like memory. You think about that as you ride. By the time the sun begins to tilt westward again, you spot the next station, perched at the edge of a wide, flat plain with windmills creaking lazily in the breeze. A boy waves you in. You wave back, more tired than you realize. They take your mare gently. You take the stew gratefully. It tastes like lentils and survival. And as you settle onto a blanket inside the station yurt, staring up at smoke curling through the roof vent, you realize something. You've stopped thinking of the road as something you survive. Now, it's just what you do. You wake to the sound of wind. Not harsh wind, but a steady, whispering current that brushes the felt walls of the yurt and flutters the edge of your blanket. Outside, The sun is just beginning to stain the horizon with watercolor oranges and bruised purples. You stretch, groan quietly, and sit up. Your body full of the creaks and clicks that come from a few too many days in the saddle, and a diet mostly consisting of jerky, old bread, and dreams of fruit. The station keeper, a woman in her 40s, with a braid thick as rope, is already up and stoking the morning fire. She nods at you without speaking and hands over a shallow bowl of salty porridge. You nod back, chewing slowly while steam curls up from your breakfast into your nose and eyes. She points toward the door. Wind'll rise today. Best to make good distance early. You agree. The mare is waiting, fresh and combed, with a new saddlecloth that doesn't smell like the inside of a wool sock left on a yurt roof. A luxury. You run your hand down her neck and mount up, adjusting the satchel so the strap doesn't dig into your shoulder. Then you're off, back on the road. Just you and the Mongol morning, both of you quietly resigned to whatever the day decides to do. Today's journey leads across what the locals call the singing plain. It's not romantic poetry, it's acoustics. The wind here whistles across long, dry grasses and low, hollow hills. Sometimes it hums. Other times it sounds like a low choir warming up in the next valley over. If you didn't know better, you might think it was voices, ghosts, or bored mountain spirits trying to learn harmony. Historians still debate what caused the Mongols to choose certain routes over others. Elevation, access to forage, sacred geography. Some suggest musical plains like this were chosen not just for their speed or shelter, but for how well they kept a rider awake. You can't doze off when the land itself won't stop whispering. A little past mid-morning, you pass a ruined watchtower. It leans like it's been listening to the wind too long. A few goats have taken up residence inside, judging by the scent. You dismount, stretch your legs, and peer through a gap in the stones. Scrawled graffiti marks one of the walls. Just faint scratches, but familiar. A courier's mark. An arrow, a spiral, and a year. 3 summers ago. Still here. You add your own below it, just a small knot of lines. Nothing flashy. But someone, someday, might see it and know you made it this far. Back on the road, the plain widens and flattens, becoming a vast expanse where even the hills get shy and lie low. The horizon stretches like taffy, and your thoughts do the same. You think about the letter in your satchel. You haven't opened it, of course. That would be unthinkable. But you've imagined the contents more than once. Maybe it's a treaty, a secret command to move troops. A marriage proposal between nobles who've never met and probably never will. Or maybe, just maybe, it's something smaller. A thank you. A complaint. An apology carried hundreds of miles by someone who isn't even allowed to read it. There's a kind of weird comfort in that. The wind shifts. Up ahead, something glints. You slow. It's a shrine. Another one. But not just any. This one's newer, fancier, built from carved stones with iron accents. The kind of place where people leave serious offerings. Knives, coins, even braids of horsehair for strength and speed. You dismount, tie the mare. Approach. The shrine has a copper disc at its center, engraved with a swirling motif. A fusion of sun, horse, and cloud. You don't know what it means. Probably protection. Or endurance. Or don't get trampled by history today. You bow your head, place a small token, a smooth pebble from your last camp, and whisper a traveler's wish under your breath, just in case. Behind the shrine, there's a stone bench, and beside it, a traveler, old, wrapped in a thick felt cloak, eating what looks like dried apricots from a pouch. He nods to you. You nod back. That's the code. He's a merchant, probably. His wagon is hidden just down a slope, tied up with canvas, and hopes it doesn't roll away in the wind. He offers you a bit of fruit. You accept. You sit for a few minutes, say little, then he asks, "Courier?" You nod. He laughs softly. You people move like ghosts, always vanishing down some road. You smile. Better than becoming one. He shrugs. Depends on the day. He tells you a short story about a lost courier who lived with marmots for 3 seasons and came back fluent in squeaks. You're not sure if it's a joke or a warning. You laugh anyway. He tells you the next yam station is downwind, just a few hours away, near the edge of the Karma Pass. Keep your horse's nose to the breeze, he says. She'll find it faster than you will. He's right. You ride on. The land gets craggier, full of ridges and outcrops that jut from the earth like buried thoughts. You stay low in the saddle, adjusting for terrain, letting the mare pick her footing. By early afternoon, you crest a slope and see the pass below, narrow, winding, shadowed. You pause to eat the rest of the apricots, sweet, leathery, with a hint of dust. They taste like endurance. Then, down. Karma Pass is quiet, too quiet. You listen for signs, birdsong, insects, voices, but the wind muffles everything. Just your own breath and hoofbeats echoing against stone. Halfway through, you spot something. Cloth, tattered, caught on a bush at the path's edge. You stop, dismount, examine it. It's a courier's sash, faded, frayed, the colour nearly gone. No body, no gear, no blood. Just a ribbon of fabric, waving weakly like it's been trying to flag someone down for weeks. You look around, nothing, no tracks, no signs, just the pass, just the wind. You take the sash and fold it carefully. Tuck it into your pouch beside your own. There's no rule that says you have to, but there's no rule that says you shouldn't. When you finally emerge from the pass, the light seems brighter, sharper, like the sun's been holding its breath too. The yam station is just ahead, a cluster of stone huts beside a shallow river, smoke curling from one chimney like a question mark. You smile, just a little. You made it through the singing plains, the shrine, and the pass. And your letter, still dry, still sealed, still waiting. You don't knock when you arrive at the next yam station. You just lean into the door with your shoulder and let the heavy wood push open, creaking like an old back. Inside, it's dim and smoky. A kettle hisses over a clay stove. 2 teenage boys play a quiet game of knucklebones on the floor. An older man, presumably the station master, glances up from polishing a saddle horn with a rag that has seen too many years. You nod at him. He nods back. That's all the paperwork required. He gestures with his chin toward the back room. Bunks in. There. Hot broth in a bit. We got new saddles if your old one's gone soft. You thank him with a few polite syllables, and he disappears through a curtain of hanging cloth. The boys don't stop their game. One glances up, briefly interested in whether or not you'll collapse on the floor. You don't. Instead, you strip off your dust-coated outer layer and give your horse a quick brushing. She's chewing hay contentedly in the lean-to out back, not at all bothered by the fact that you nearly ghosted out in the Karma Pass. Horses tend to be humble like that. You collapse onto a pile of blankets and breathe out something that's not quite a sigh and not quite a prayer. The walls here are thick, built from stone and reinforced with wool and tar. They keep the wind out, mostly. You can still hear it, at the edges, like a whisper telling you that your journey isn't over. Still, for now, you have soup. Soup and shelter. And if you're lucky, sleep without sand in your ears. You wake before dawn, again. Because couriers don't get to linger. The saddle is ready. This one's firmer, made from cured leather stitched by someone who really cared about symmetry. A small detail, but you appreciate it. The route ahead is known for its rocky ridges and uneven terrain, what the Mongols called the kneecap breakers. Not a flattering nickname. The next leg of your route climbs steadily. You follow a trail of hooves hardened into the earth, evidence of riders who've come before you, dozens or hundreds, pressed into the dust like the Mongol Empire's version of a breadcrumb trail. You ride through valleys where the only sound is the squawk of a crow and the occasional rustle of wind-thinned trees. These aren't the endless plains anymore. This is rock country, hills, peaks, gorges, places where footing matters and so. Does your balance? Historians still argue about how the Mongols trained their horses to navigate these winding paths. Some say it was instinct, passed from dam to foal. Others claim it was training, with each horse walked through the routes over and over, like a schoolchild repeating their letters. Still others suggest it was the riders, not the horses, who learned to read the land like a story. Each ridge a sentence, each stone a pause. You ride low, keep your weight centered. At one point, the trail narrows to barely a horse's width. On one side, the mountain leans in, close enough to scrape your elbow. On the other, a steep drop yawns, like a forgotten God's mouth. You don't look down. You just breathe and ride. At the summit, you find something odd. A cairn, normal enough. Stacked stones are common here. But on top, someone's balanced a carved figurine. A horse, tiny, no bigger than your palm. Its head is turned to the side, its tail flicked in motion. A traveller's charm. You wonder who left it. Maybe another courier, years ago, riding this very same route with a message they weren't allowed to read. Or maybe someone who never made it past this point and hoped a little stone horse might keep their spirit company. You don't disturb it. Just bow your head in acknowledgement and move on. The trail descends, winding through narrow ravines where the light barely reaches. The air grows cooler and your fingers tingle against the reins. In the shadows, the world feels paused, like even time is catching its breath. You pass a herder and his goats perched impossibly on a slanted slope. He raises a hand. You raise yours back. He doesn't ask your business. You don't ask his. You both know the road is answer enough. By mid-morning, you reach a wide plateau. It's ringed with crumbling stone markers, half-buried waypoints from centuries back. Most travelers wouldn't even notice them, but you do. You've been trained to see the subtle signs, not just landmarks, but echoes. One marker bears a series of notches, not writing, at least not formally, but a courier's code. 3 long, cuts, 2 short, a crescent carved beneath. You grin. It's a sign for rain shelter. A few minutes later, you spot the outcrop, an overhang tucked into the stone wall like nature's answer to a bus stop. You guide your mare beneath it, just as the first drops begin to fall. Mongol weather is a prankster. It can be blue sky clear one moment and full monsoon the next. You huddle in the dry, eat a small round of cheese left over from the last station, and sip water from your flask. You take this time to check the satchel again, letter still sealed. Edges curled a little, maybe, but no worse for wear. Whatever's inside, it's been carried across deserts, through plains that sing, into mountain passes, and now through rain. Maybe it's important, maybe it's not. You'll never know. But you do know this. It got where it needed to go, or it will. And that somehow feels like its own kind of message. When the rain clears, you ride again. The ground squelches in places, but your mare is sure-footed. You talk to her more now. Not words exactly, just noises, whistles, clicks, little muttered observations about clouds or rocks that look like sheep. She doesn't respond, but you suspect she listens. As the afternoon wanes, you see smoke on the horizon. The next yam station, larger than the last. This one's got actual walls, painted ones even. Murals depicting heroic riders, battles, messengers with wind streaming from their cloaks. You suppose it's flattering, though in real life, your cloak mostly flaps like a wet curtain. Still, it's nice to be remembered in pigment. You're welcomed inside by a woman with a half-shaved head and rings on every finger. She sizes you up in one glance and points to the stable. Your horse gets millet. You get stew. If you want a bath, it costs you a joke. You nod. What kind of joke? She grins. A funny one. You think for a second, then offer, "Why don't step horses ever gamble?" She shrugs. Why? Because they're always folding under pressure. She groans. Awful. But she waves you toward the bathhouse anyway. The stew is hot. The bath is scalding. The floor is clean stone. And for once, You don't fall asleep with your boots on. That night, under wool blankets and the slow hiss of the fire, you dream of endless roads and little stone horses that point the way forward. You leave the mural-painted yam station with the dawn's gold just beginning to drip across the sky, like butter melting down the edge of a skillet. The road is quiet. Your horse's hooves thud softly against a path that feels more like suggestion than trail. Grass grows tall here, and wildflowers peek up in clusters like they're gossiping about you as you ride past. You're entering the next phase of the imperial road system, less about sheer endurance, more about navigation. These routes weave between small settlements, over winding ridges, and through dry gullies, places where it's easy to veer slightly off course and end up nowhere. Fortunately, you're not alone. Well, you're the only person, but you're joined by the invisible lattice of guidance left behind by generations of couriers before you. Etchings in bark, stones turned upside down, the rare but unmistakable bent iron marker hidden near streams. It's like being part of a secret club. No membership card, just instinct and an eye for pattern. As you climb a modest hill, a pair of birds, tiny, irritable things, flap up from the underbrush and scold you for existing. You apologize out loud. They do not accept your apology. Historians still argue about how standardized these postal paths really were. Some insist there was a precise master map, each route plotted with mathematical care. Others argue it was more organic, grown out of familiarity and refined by time, with riders like you making quiet edits to the landscape with every trip. Either way, it works. You reach a fork in the road just past a willow tree. One path is straight and wide, leading toward open pasture land. The other is crooked, narrow, and mostly hidden by brambles. You take the crooked one, because the wide path looks too obvious. And Mongol couriers learned quickly that obvious often meant trouble. Bandits, blockades, or in the worst-case scenario, bureaucrats with clipboards. The crooked path, though, that's your kind of road. It takes you into a shaded grove, where the air smells like pine and damp moss. For a few blissful minutes, you ride in near silence. Just the creak of your saddle, the hum of bugs, and the occasional snap of twigs as deer dart through the trees. Then you hear a sound you haven't heard in days. Voices. You slow your horse, ease off the trail, and crouch behind a rise in the earth. It's a group of travelers, maybe 6 of them, on foot. They're hauling a cart piled high with wool bundles, and they're arguing in a dialect you recognize as Western Turkic. From what you can tell, they're lost, and annoyed about it. You consider revealing yourself. Mongol couriers were generally respected. More than that, they were feared, envied, and occasionally bribed. But they were not often harmed. The system had strict consequences for interfering with the mail. Extremely strict. Like, you lose a hand, strict. Still, you're not in the mood to chat. You wait until they shuffle off down the wider path, then ease your way back onto the trail and resume your journey. Not long after, you find what you were looking for, a single pole jammed into the dirt at an odd angle, its top wrapped in faded blue silk, the traditional kadag, a sky offering. To most people, it's spiritual decoration. To you, it's directions. One twist of the fabric means turn east. 2 twists. Rest stop nearby. This one's got 3, which means take the low road unless you enjoy broken ankles. You make a mental note to leave your own kadag on the return trip. For now, you press on. The land begins to flatten, widening into a sweep of wind-brushed grass. There's a calm here that feels earned, like the earth itself is taking a breath between mountain ranges. You spot smoke ahead. Another station. This one is modest, just 2 yurts. One for sleeping, one for eating. The station keeper is a woman in her 60s with a white braid and a voice like sandpaper on wood. She doesn't ask your name, just says, "You smell like rocks," and hands you a bowl of fermented mare's milk. You thank her. You do, in fact, smell like rocks. Over dinner, some dried mutton and flatbread. She tells you about a storm that knocked out a bridge 2 days ago. If you were heading east, that would be a problem. But you're riding south. You nod, chew slowly, and feel sleep pull at your limbs like wet wool. You wake to the sound of a horse snorting just outside the yurt. It's not yours. You peek out and spot another courier. A boy, maybe 14. He wears the official sash, but it's too big. Flaps around his waist like a flag caught in a breeze. He nods at you. You nod back. Nothing else is said. In the courier world, that's practically a poem. He disappears into the food yurt while you saddle up. You're on different routes, headed in opposite directions. Ships passing in the steppe. As you leave, the station keeper tosses you a dried plum. Chew slow, she says. You've still got a week's ride ahead. You do. But for now, the sun's behind your shoulder. Your mare's feeling spry, and the road is yours again. You begin humming, just a little, off-key and low, but it keeps the rhythm. And besides, no one's around to complain, except maybe the birds. And they already hate you. There's a particular kind of tired that settles into your bones after 2 weeks on horseback. It's not the exhaustion of overexertion or the sting of an injury. It's a quiet, humming fatigue that makes your hands clumsy when tying your saddle knots, and your thoughts drift like a kite with a loose string. You get comfortable with discomfort. Your thighs are sore. Your wrists ache from constant rein correction. And your lower back has developed its own opinion about every jolt in the road. And yet, you ride on, because that's the job. Today's stretch takes you through low-lying marshland, not the squelchy kind that eats boots, but the kind where shallow reeds wave in the breeze and dragonflies hover like tiny sky spies. Your horse picks her way carefully through the damp earth, hooves making soft plunk sounds with each step. Overhead, the sky is a pale wash of blue, clouds drifting like discarded sheepskin. The air smells green, wet plants, peat, and something, slightly sour you can't name. You follow the edge of the marsh, watching for the landmarks passed down from courier to courier. One of them is coming up now, a crooked tree that splits into 3 branches like a trident. Locals call it the old man's comb, supposedly struck by lightning decades ago and left half charred. It marks the fork between the merchant road and the messenger path. You steer your horse toward the narrower trail, which curls away from the main road and into a corridor of whispering reeds. Historians still argue whether these inland routes were as secure as the well-travelled imperial highways. Some claim the quiet back trails were safer, free of bandits and border guards. Others insist they were full of hidden risks, mudslides, wild dogs, unsupervised geese. Never underestimate the rage of a goose that thinks you're too close to its nest. You run into none of those today. What you do encounter, however, is a shrine. It's a modest one, just a collection of stones stacked into a low pyramid, draped with tattered silk ribbons. A small wooden fox, carved with delicate paws and an oversized grin, sits at the base. You dismount, offer a few dried berries from your rations, a polite gesture. Not strictly required, but these little shrines mark more than directions. They're emotional breadcrumbs, a way for travelers to say, I was here, I mattered, I honored the road. You sit for a moment, listening to the wind sift through. The reeds. In the distance, a heron lifts off from the water like a slow exhale, back in the saddle. The path climbs slightly now, firming into dry soil. You pass a pair of wandering goats, escapees no doubt. One eyes your saddlebag with interest. You gently shoo it away with your hat, earning a disgruntled bleat. You stop to let your mare drink at a muddy stream, and while she gulps happily, you check your satchel. The seal on the letter is still intact. Red wax, pressed with a symbol you don't recognize, probably a provincial governor's emblem, or maybe some high-ranking merchant guild's flourish. Either way, it's not for you to know. You remember the old saying, the messenger sees the world, but never reads its secrets. A strange fate when you think about it. You cross deserts, mountains, storms, and bandit trails for words you're never allowed to hear. It's like carrying treasure in a locked box and being told the key is none of your business. Still, the rhythm of the job has its own rewards. You've seen more skies than most people dream of. Drunk yak milk in cliffside. Villagers slept under stars so bright they look carved into the firmament. You've raced time and watched history pass under your feet like a road made of stories. It's not nothing, even if your knees will eventually file a formal complaint. Midday finds you at a crossroads marked with stacked stones and an animal skull. Possibly a goat, possibly something less identifiable. The sun is high, and you eat a bit of hard bread with dried apricots, watching ants make impressive logistical choices beneath your feet. Your mare rests in the shade of a leaning willow, flicking her tail with just enough attitude to remind you who does the real work around here. You resume the journey an hour later. The air shifts. There's a breeze now, dry and brisk, which usually means a change in elevation is coming. Sure enough, the trail narrows and begins to climb, threading between two low ridges topped with scrub brush and loose rock. Up ahead, you spot something curious. A piece of fabric flapping from a bush. You ride closer. It's a sash, bright red, frayed at the ends, tied loosely like someone left it in a hurry. There's no blood, no signs of distress, just the sash whispering nonsense in the wind. You leave it where it is. Could be nothing, could be something. But the trail doesn't stop, and neither do you. By early evening, you catch sight of another yam station. This one tucked between two hills, like it's hiding. Smoke curls gently from a central vent, and you smell wood fire and stewed lentils before you see a single person. The station keeper is a bearded man with one eye and a broad grin. He greets you with exaggerated delight, as though you're a long-lost friend who finally remembered their way home. "You'll be wanting stew," he says, "and maybe a story or two?" You nod. That sounds perfect. The station's interior is snug and simple. Rugs layered thickly on the floor, low benches padded with old sheepskin, and a fire that crackles like it knows you're listening. Over dinner, your host tells you about a courier who passed through. Last week, with a hawk riding his shoulder, swore it was trained to scream at any roadblock. The bird, apparently, was extremely dramatic. You can't tell if the story's true, but it doesn't matter. Truth is often less important than entertainment out here. And besides, dramatic hawks make the road feel a little less lonely. Before you sleep, you tend to your mare one last time. She's tired, but content. You both are. The sky darkens. A soft wind brushes the edge of the yurt. Somewhere nearby, a fox yips once, then falls silent. You curl into your blanket, letter still safe at your side, and think about that carved fox at the shrine. Its grin, its secrets. Maybe one day you'll leave a token of your own behind. Something small. Something that says, "I passed this way." Morning begins, as it always does, with creaking joints, the cold kiss of damp fabric, and the unmistakable smell of horse breath much too close to your face. Your mare has decided to personally ensure you're awake by nudging the side of the yurt with her nose until the whole structure politely trembles. You groan, stretch, and emerge into the morning fog like a very confused ghost. The station keeper hands you a bowl of rice porridge without a word. You nod. This is the highest compliment anyone can give at dawn. As you eat, you examine your route. You're heading into a hilly, wind-carved region known by couriers as the rib cage. Not because of any morbid legend, but because the terrain folds and rises in sharp, narrow ridges that resemble the ribs of a giant sleeping under the earth. It's both beautiful and mildly annoying to ride through. Today, you'll traverse 5 of those ridges. You tighten your saddle, adjust your mailbag, and ride out beneath a sky smeared with pastel clouds. The wind smells of stone and early sunlight. The first ridge isn't too bad. A steady incline with switchbacks carved long ago by goat herders, who clearly didn't believe in straight lines. The path is narrow, but firm. You take it slow, letting your horse pick the pace. As you crest the ridge, you pause for a breath and a view. The land stretches in every direction. Golden valleys, scattered rock formations, the faint outline of another courier road winding in the distance like a ribbon someone forgot to roll up. It's a moment of silence that settles deep into your chest. Then, a sneeze. Your own, which echoes, loudly, startling a herd of antelope 2 ridges over. Sorry, antelope. Ridge 2 is trickier. The path narrows between 2 cliffs, with loose stones and a rather opinionated hawk circling overhead. You duck as it swoops uncomfortably close, possibly mistaking your hat for prey, or just offering unsolicited feedback on your riding form. You press on. By ridge 3, you're feeling the ache. This one's steep and covered in a stubborn shrub that seems to exist solely to scratch your knees. You curse gently under your breath, then apologize to the shrub, just in case. That's the kind of road mad you get after enough weeks alone with plants and weather. Historians still argue whether the Mongol postal couriers were expected to memorize every variation of these landscape routes, or if they had rotating maps. Some believe a central archive kept updated scrolls. Others claim the real memory bank was the station keepers, those quiet encyclopedias with calloused hands and names that spanned 3 generations of gossip. You tend to believe the latter. Maps can burn, people remember. At the bottom of the 4th ridge, you meet a group of local shepherds moving a cluster of shaggy goats. One of them, a boy no older than 10, points at your sash and gives you a shy salute. You return the gesture. He runs back to his goats, proud. His grandmother offers you a handful of dried figs and a warning. Watch for the cloud's shadow. When it's fast, wind is coming. You don't fully understand, but you nod respectfully and thank her. Dried figs go in your satchel. A potential proverb goes in your memory. Ridge 5 takes the rest of the afternoon. It's a winding monster, littered with old footprints, collapsed cans, and once, the broken frame of what might have been a cart, or possibly a very ambitious sled. You guide your horse carefully, both of you sweating despite the cool breeze. Near the top, you stop. There's something glinting in the dirt. You dismount and brush aside the gravel to find a copper coin, smoothed by age and probably dropped years ago. You roll it between your fingers. Not worth anything. Except it is, because it proves someone was here. You bury it again, deeper this time. Let the road keep its secrets. The sun begins to drop as you reach the end of the ridge. Shadows stretch long and the wind picks up, just as the shepherd woman warned. You spot the next yam station tucked beneath a rocky overhang, camouflaged by nature and clever design. It's smaller than most. No smoke, no horses outside. You dismount cautiously. A man steps out of the structure as you approach, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Courier?" he asks, already knowing the answer. You nod. He squints at the horizon. You made good time. Inside, it's warm and quiet. You're offered salted cheese, a bowl of barley stew, and, somewhat surprisingly, a brief foot soak. A wooden basin is dragged over, hot water poured in with a handful of dried herbs. You don't ask what kind. You just sigh and lower your feet like someone placing precious cargo onto a silk pillow. The station keeper, it turns out, used to be a courier himself, retired after a bad fall. His right leg never healed quite right. Now he tends to the riders who pass through, watching the world flow past his doorstep like a slow-moving river. He tells you a story about a courier who once outran a sandstorm by switching horses 3 times in one day. About how the same courier lost his voice from screaming into the wind, but never dropped the message. Never knew what was in it, the man says, but it made it. That's what mattered. You think about that long after the fire dims and your stew bowl is empty. About how so many lives are shaped by letters no one else reads. The world turns on unread messages, whispered names, promises wrapped in wax. You sleep deeply that night, dreamlessly, a luxury only the very tired get to enjoy. Morning slides in quietly. No rooster crowing, no clanging pots, just the soft hiss of wind curling past the station walls and the faint creak of wood as the yurt breathes with temperature. Change. You wake slowly, the way moss might decide to grow in a new direction. Half aware, half asleep, limbs reluctant to cooperate. But there's a letter to deliver, and so you rise. The station keeper greets you with a mug of something hot, slightly bitter, and suspiciously medicinal. It's root tea, he says. Keeps the joints from mutiny. You drink it. The taste is like licking a damp cupboard, but your knees do feel looser by the time you saddle up. Today's journey will be different. You're entering a region known less for its dramatic landscapes, and more for its unpredictable weather. Valleys where mist settles without warning, and rivers crisscross the land like spilled ink. This is farm country, pasture and patchwork, fields, not as wild as the ribcage, but slippery in its own subtle way. The trail curves between fields of barley, their golden heads bowed in the morning dew. You pass a woman washing laundry in a shallow creek, her sleeves rolled high and her baby strapped to her back, gurgling contentedly. She doesn't glance up. She's seen couriers before. You're just another ripple in her day. The road here is softer underfoot, worn smooth by generations of hooves and carts. You pass crumbling stone fences, overtaken by moss, and a pair of oxen lazily chewing the same mouthful for what seems like hours. A herdsman waves once, distractedly, like he's still thinking about something from last season. It's peaceful, almost enough to lull you into forgetting your job. But then you spot it, a collapsed bridge. Well, bridge might be generous. It's a pair of stone piers and some scattered planks, all of which have clearly decided their structural obligations were too much. The stream below is narrow but fast-moving, with cold, clear water surging over slick stones. Historians still argue whether Mongol couriers were expected to fix such crossings or simply find alternatives. Some say temporary rope bridges were part of their kit. Others believe local villagers kept a watchful eye and lent assistance when needed, in exchange for small favors or imperial goodwill. You, today, do not have a rope bridge. What you have is one slightly annoyed horse, a mildly heroic attitude, and a decent understanding of physics. You guide your mare downstream until you spot a natural crossing, a fallen tree, half submerged, slick with moss, but passable if approached with caution, and no sudden movements. You dismount, remove your satchel, and begin the slow, careful dance of convincing your horse to cross. She protests once, twice, then plants one hoof onto the log with the precision of a tightrope walker. Halfway across, the wind picks up and ripples through the trees like a laugh trying to hide. But she makes it. You both do. On the other side, soaked boots and a soggy hem are your only toll. Not bad, all things considered. By midday, the sun burns off the fog, revealing clusters of yurts in the distance, smoke rising gently, and the hum of daily life drifting through the air like a lullaby. Children's voices, the clack of weaving looms, someone hammering metal in a rhythm that almost feels musical. You pass a man painting a cartwheel with lacquer made from tree sap and ash. He nods without stopping. You ride on, and then, just after the hill crests, you spot a group of riders, 5 of them, moving at a casual pace across the plain. You, tense. Not all travelers are friendly. But as they draw near, you recognize the sash. The lead rider is another imperial courier. He grins when he sees you. "You're late," he says. You laugh. "You're early." He dismounts with a groan and tosses you a pouch of dried persimmons. "You'll want these," he adds. The next yam station ran out. The others stretch, check their gear, and swap gossip like old friends at a bathhouse. You talk shop, road conditions, recent weather patterns, rumors of a new shortcut through the northern dunes. One courier claims he saw a 2-headed camel last week. Everyone nods as if this is only mildly surprising. You ride together for a while. There's something strangely comforting about the clop-clop rhythm of multiple horses moving in tandem, like a drumbeat you don't have to keep alone. For a few hours, the world feels wider and lighter. Then, the others peel off toward a side road, waving farewell with lazy salutes. You continue alone. Again. The path takes you through a wooded area next, quiet, with tall trees whose leaves chatter like nervous neighbors. You spot deer tracks, a fox print, And, just once, a set of human footprints heading the opposite way. Barefoot, small. You wonder who they belong to. You don't stop to find out. By late afternoon, the sky shifts. Clouds gather in thoughtful layers, and the air grows heavy, like it's holding its breath. You quicken your pace, hoping to reach the next yam before the rain starts. A flash of lightning flickers far off, followed by a distant rumble. You glance at your mare. She glances back. Both of you are thinking the same thing. Let's not get wet if we can help it. Just as the first fat drop hits your nose, you see it. A squat building with a curved roof and smoke rising from a chimney like a cheerful flag. You make it inside, just as the sky opens up. The station keeper, a wiry woman with an uncanny ability to move without making any noise, ushers you in and hands you a dry cloth. She doesn't ask questions, just gestures toward the fire and begins ladling hot soup into a bowl. You eat like you haven't tasted anything in days. Later, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, you stare into the flames. They crackle softly, tossing up sparks like lazy fireflies. You think about the letter in your satchel, still sealed, still silent, and somehow still the reason for every hoofbeat behind you. You wake to the soft patter of rain on a hide roof. It's the sort of sound that lingers in dreams and persuades your body to stay horizontal just a little longer. But the station keeper, efficient as ever, has already set out your saddle blanket to dry and stacked your supplies by the door with the silent suggestion that you move along before the mud gets too enthusiastic. You sip warm broth for breakfast. Simple, salty, effective. Then you brush down your horse, secure your satchel, and step out into a world painted in shades of wet grey. The rain has softened to a drizzle, just enough to turn the dirt path into something squelchy and philosophical. You ride at a careful pace, hooves squelching, wheels of water collecting on your sleeves, and yet, there's something calming about this weather. No sun in your eyes, no wind screaming through your ears, just mist curling around fence posts and birds rustling beneath reeds. You pass a group of cranes standing in a field, motionless and mildly judgmental. They look at you like you've interrupted their morning poetry recital. Sorry, you mutter. They blink in unison and go back to being statues. Your route today cuts through a region known for its unexpected marshes. What looks like solid ground one moment can reveal itself to be ankle-deep soup the next. Mongol couriers were trained to read soil the way monks read manuscripts. Shifts in grass color, the tilt of a weed, the way the air smells just wrong. You've learned to spot the subtle signs too. A darker patch here, a quivering edge there. You dismount often to test the ground ahead, muttering to yourself like an amateur wizard hoping the bog doesn't bite. Historians still argue whether the Mongols maintained detailed seasonal maps for terrain like this. Some say there were rotating scribes who rode with engineers, updating paths as rivers swelled and dried. Others believe it was all word of mouth, handed off from rider to rider, like riddles passed in code. Either way, today's riddle is this: avoid sinking. At midday, you reach a river crossing, this one mercifully bridged. The structure is rough but solid, built from cedar and iron rivets, with symbols carved along the railing in a script you can't quite place. Possibly Uyghur, possibly wishful thinking. You pause in the middle of the bridge and let the view settle into you. Below, the river churns softly, carrying leaves, whispers, maybe even old secrets. Beyond it, open plain, low clouds, the vague outline of hills like sleeping dogs on the horizon. And then, the sound of hooves. Fast. You turn. Another rider approaches. A young courier, drenched, determined, and slightly wild-eyed. He reins in sharply beside you. His horse snorts steam. "Letter from Karakoram," he gasps, holding out a sealed pouch. You blink. "I'm not the receiver." He shakes his head. "You're going farther than I can. It's urgent. Please." And just like that, you're holding 2 letters now. Twice the responsibility. Double the secrecy. You nod. Safe travels, you say, and he's off again, hooves hammering the planks like drums in retreat. You tuck the new letter into your inner wrap, close to your chest. It's heavier than it should be. Or maybe that's just your imagination. By mid-afternoon, the clouds break. Not all at once, just little holes of blue, like a curtain reluctantly drawn. Sunlight spears down, illuminating patches of grass so green they feel exaggerated. Your horse lifts her head, grateful. You pass a grove of apricot trees, wild and blooming, their fruit still shy but visible. You pluck one. It's tart and sweet, and wakes up your mouth in the nicest way. Later, you cross paths with an old ox cart, groaning under sacks of millet. The driver waves, then points to your sash. Take the left fork ahead, he advises. Right one's flooded bad. You thank him, and sure enough, a mile later, you find the fork. Left is muddy but firm. Right is waterlogged and quite possibly bottomless. You think again about how much this system relies not on signs or rules, but on trust. On humans pointing the way, helping each other stay upright. The YAM network, while centrally coordinated, was deeply human at its roots. And it worked not just because of the infrastructure, but because people cared. About the message, the system, the empire, or sometimes just the person riding past. That thought stays with you as you spot the day's destination. A low station nestled between two hills, half covered in ivy, like it's trying to hide from responsibility. You knock gently with your boot. The door opens with a creak, revealing a young woman with soot on her nose and a cat draped across her shoulders like a scarf. She stares at you. "Courier?" You nod. She sighs with relief. "We weren't sure if anyone would make it through the marsh this week." Inside, the station is cramped but cozy. The cat disappears the moment you step in, clearly unimpressed by your credentials. You hang your soaked cloak by the fire and hand over one of your letters. The woman doesn't open it, just tucks it into a lockbox and marks something in a ledger. "Do you want stew?" she asks. You nod again. She smiles slightly. "You're a quiet one." You shrug. Your voice has been used up by wind and rain and the occasional motivational speech to your horse. Dinner is lentils, carrots, and what might be wild goose. The cat reappears halfway through, now interested in your presence, specifically your bowl. You give it a spoonful. It purrs in response. After you eat, you help the station keeper reinforce a leaky window with extra hide strips. She tells you, "This outpost used to be a grain store before the roads shifted. My grandmother was born here," she says. "Now I send riders out every week." You ask her softly, what keeps her here? She shrugs. "I like knowing I'm part of something that moves even when I don't." You understand more than you say. That night, you lay down on a mat that smells faintly of dried thyme. Your horse sleeps in a lean-to nearby. The second letter rests near your chest, pulsing with unread weight. Outside, the wind hums through. Grass, whispering secrets you'll never quite catch. Morning doesn't so much dawn as sneak in sideways. A greyish light filters through the hide-covered window, casting soft shadows across the room. The fire has gone out. The cat is curled on your legs, and the station keeper is already up, quietly boiling water over a fresh flame, humming something that might be a lullaby or a recipe. You stretch, muscles complain. Your joints stage a formal protest, but there's no time for democracy in your knees. Letters don't deliver themselves. You thank the keeper. She hands you a small parcel, dried meat wrapped in waxed cloth, and says, "Left fork again. Mudslide last night." You nod, slide your satchel over your shoulder, and step out into another damp morning. The air is thick with the smell of turned earth and wet bark. Your mare flicks her ears at you, unimpressed with this week's weather, but too loyal to complain outright. Today's path cuts through what locals call the Whispering Valley. It's not dramatic or particularly dangerous, just long, winding, and strange in that way where sound does unexpected things. A crow can caw in a tree 50 yards away and it'll sound like it's perched on your shoulder. A stream trickles in stereo from the wrong direction. Some believe the valley is haunted. You decide it's simply acoustically overachieving. The mud is thick again, but manageable. Occasionally your horse stops to shake a hoof free like a dog with something stuck in its paw. You apologize. She forgives you mostly. Halfway through the valley, you come across a small shrine, wooden, lopsided, crowned with weathered ribbons fluttering from sticks. You dismount, approach, and bow once out of habit. There's a small offering dish with a few copper coins, a dried fig, and something that looks suspiciously like a piece of chicken jerky. You add a pebble. It's what you have. Historians still argue whether Mongol couriers regularly made offerings, or whether that was a personal choice. Some records suggest prayers for safe passage were common, especially in places with confusing terrain or rumored spirits. Others say it was a holdover from older steppe customs, blended with Buddhism and shamanistic practices. Either way, it feels right. You move on. The terrain shifts gradually. Fewer trees, more open field. The wind returns, playful and irregular, tugging at your sash and occasionally lifting your hood just to say hello. Up ahead, you spot a group of riders moving slowly across the horizon. Herders, likely, with sheep or goats in tow. As you approach, one of them rides out to meet you. He's middle-aged, sun-leathered, and missing at least 2 teeth. "Courier?" he asks. You nod. He pulls a small pouch from inside his coat and offers it to you. "Can you drop this at the Gobi Ridge Yam? My nephew left it." You hesitate only a moment before accepting. Another tiny duty stacked onto your growing collection. The man grins, slaps your horse gently on the flank, and rides off. The pouch smells like roasted barley. You don't ask what's in it. Instead, you ride on until you spot something unfamiliar. A field of low stone mounds, each one ringed with bones, mostly sheep, maybe some goat, arranged in what looks like spirals. You pause. "Cemetery?" You murmur. No. Too neatly spaced. Too symmetrical. Possibly some form of border marking, or even ancient ceremonial platforms. The bones are clean, whitened by time and weather. A crow perches on one, clearly uninterested in the spiritual implications. You pass through them slowly, feeling a weird tingle along your spine. Not fear exactly, just the sensation of being noticed by people long gone. Beyond the stones, the trail narrows and curves around a low hill, where wildflowers bloom in soft clusters, yellows, whites, and the occasional burst of blue. You pick one, an Edelweiss-looking thing, and tuck it behind your ear, just because. There's no one to impress out here except the wind, and it's famously hard to flatter. By mid-afternoon, the sun finally decides to participate. It peeks from behind the clouds like a shy cousin, warming your shoulders and drying your sleeves. The path widens again, now following an old game trail carved out by years of hoofbeats and animal migrations. You see tracks, hoofprints, paw prints, and claws. You pause. The prints are large, wide-set, and definitely feline. Probably a snow leopard. Your horse notices too, her ears swiveling like radar dishes. You murmur nonsense to her, soothing, sleepy nonsense. And then, out of nowhere, a fox darts across the path, startling both of you. You laugh nervously. The horse does not. You move on. Later, you crest a hill and see the yam station perched in a shallow bowl of land. Its roof patched with mismatched shingles, smoke curling from a crooked chimney, and a wooden gate that swings in the breeze like it's too tired to close properly. You're expected. The station keeper, a lanky man with startlingly red hair, greets you with a mug of fermented mare's milk and a raised eyebrow. "You've got 2 letters?" he asks. You nod and hand over the original one. The newer, heavier letter still has miles to go. He squints at it. "Urgent?" You shrug. "Feels important?" He snorts. "They always do." That night, after helping him carry in firewood and watching the stars blink into view one by one, you settle into a bedroll tucked into a loft corner. The ceiling is low. You bump your head twice. You don't care. You're asleep before you finish the thought. Outside, the wind sighs gently across the grasslands, brushing over the bones of old kingdoms and the boots of tired messengers alike. Tomorrow, the hills get steeper. But for now, the valley is still. And so are you. You wake with the smell of ashes and saddle oil in your nose. The loft is warmer than expected, thanks to the station's wood-burning stove, and maybe the red-haired keeper's curious habit of drying his boots under your bedroll. One is still there when you sit up, tilted like it's judging your sleep posture. You dress slowly, not out of laziness, but ritual. Tunic, belt, shoulder satchel, letter tucked close. The parcel of roasted barley still rides along, quietly loyal. Downstairs, the keeper is spooning gruel into his mouth with the blank expression of someone who gave up taste in exchange for calories. He gestures wordlessly at a second bowl. You sit, eat, and thank him with a nod. Today, the road tilts. Literally. The flatlands are behind you, and the foothills of the Gobi Ridge stretch ahead, long and bruised, like the backs of sleeping giants. There's no formal path, just suggestions in the dirt and occasional cairns to guide your way. As you mount up, the keeper hands you a bit of advice instead of food. If you see a vulture flying low, don't follow it. Someone else already made that mistake. You salute him with your ladle and begin the climb. The Mongol postal system didn't just sprawl across deserts and steppes, it defied altitude. Couriers regularly crossed treacherous ridgelines, guiding their animals through goat paths and boulder fields, always chasing the shortest possible route. There were no tunnels. There were barely switchbacks, just faith in your footing and the occasional helpful yak. Your horse is not thrilled. You both begin the incline with admirable optimism, which fades fast as the trail narrows into something resembling a game of don't slip or perish. Each step is careful, deliberate. You're no stranger to altitude, but the air here feels thinner, sharper, like it's been filed down to a blade's edge. The wind picks up in little lunges, tugging at your satchel and trying to read your letter. Over your shoulder. Around mid-morning, you pass an abandoned outpost, just a crumbled hut and a sagging corral gate. Someone long ago lived here, waited here, cooked soup and repaired saddles, and possibly stared at this same boulder thinking, that looks like a suspiciously judgmental goat. There are no goats now, but there is a pile of small, sun-bleached skulls near the fence. Fox, bird, rodent, a shrine, a warning, an art project. Historians still argue whether remote yam stations doubled as seasonal shelters for herders, or if some were repurposed into spiritual sites when traffic declined. A few argue they became mini-kingdoms ruled by lonely keepers who talked to birds and set their own tax rates. Today, you decide not to speculate too much. Your next hours are spent in the rhythm of mountain riding. Lean forward, grip tight, watch your footing, speak kindly to your horse. The terrain is mostly rock, sharp, uneven, and prone to shifting just when you think it's trustworthy. At one point, you dismount to lead your mare across a narrow ridge. She grumbles with every step but follows, her breath misting the air. Below you, the valley spills out like a dropped quilt. Layers of gold grass, brown scrub, and grey streambeds, twisting like threads. You stop, just for a moment, to breathe, to listen. There's a hum in the wind, deep and low, like a song being sung beneath the earth. Or maybe it's just your ears adjusting to the altitude. You eat a strip of jerky. It tastes like salted regret. Then you press on. By early afternoon, you reach a flat shoulder of the ridge, a natural shelf with a clear view of the plains behind you and the harder climb ahead. Here, nestled between two boulders, is something unexpected. A carved stone box. It's waist-high, weathered, and covered in inscriptions, some in Uyghur script, others in Chinese, one faint Mongolian word scratched near the base. Rest, it says. You do. Sitting beside the box, you let your legs dangle over the slope. You sip water, share a bit with your horse, and try to decipher the carvings. There's an etching of a wheel, a bow, and what looks like a loaf of bread with legs. A courier's version of graffiti. You leave a smooth stone on top, following tradition. Others have done the same. Blue pebbles, rusted coins, even a braid of horsehair. You remount, the climb resuming with fresh determination and a bit of aching optimism. Around the next bend, you find what passes for excitement out here. A marmot with no sense of personal space darts between your horse's legs, prompting a minor dance recital on a cliff edge. You both survive. The marmot does not apologize. That evening, you reach the next station, a low square structure half carved into the hillside. It's warm from the sun, protected from the worst wind, and oddly quiet. No smoke, no sounds, just the creak of a door swinging open slowly when you knock. A boy stands there, maybe 11. He peers at you with wary curiosity, clutching a stick that could be a toy or a weapon or both. "Father's away," he says, "but I've got soup." Turns out he's not lying. The soup is thin, but hot, and it comes with a story. His father left 2 days ago to retrieve a runaway mule and hasn't returned. The boy's keeping the station running. He's fed 2 riders already and reshoed a horse with nails older than he is. You sleep in the corner, under a roof that leaks, but only a little. The boy wakes twice during the night to check the fire. Each time, you listen. Each time, you smile. Because this system, this sprawling empire of letters and paths and mountains, it isn't just roads and maps and horses. It's people, even small ones, especially small ones. The next morning, the boy sees you off like a seasoned innkeeper, offering a nod, a tin cup of hot tea, and a piece of advice. The wind's faster on the ridge today. Tuck your scarf or you'll eat half the sky. You promise to heed his wisdom. He nods once more, then disappears back into the station, like a very tiny legend in training. You begin the ascent again, saddle creaking, hooves tapping against frost-dusted stones. Your breath curls like smoke. You wrap your scarf tighter. Today, the world narrows. The path hugs the cliffside so closely that your knee brushes the rock at times. Below, a steep drop is draped in morning mist, hiding just how far you'd fall if you sneezed too enthusiastically. You hum to yourself for courage. The horse replies with a snort that sounds like sarcasm. Somewhere above you, vultures circle, lazy spirals on invisible thermals. You try not to imagine what they're looking for. Probably just sightseeing. Maybe they're the mountain's gossip column. Despite the nerve-rattling height, you can't help but notice how beautiful it all is. Jagged peaks painted with streaks of snow. Valleys folded like parchment below. The sky so clear it looks rinsed. The Mongol postal network didn't just conquer distance, it conquered elevation. At its peak, the system could relay messages from Karakoram to the Caspian Sea in just a couple of weeks. That meant mastering every kind of terrain imaginable. Rivers, deserts, forests, mountains, and doing it with nothing more than hooves, stamina, and the occasional prayer to whatever deity oversaw bridge crossings and sore thighs. There were no GPS markers, no guardrails, and certainly no travel insurance. Just cairns and instinct, and occasionally yaks, which is exactly what blocks your path around the next bend. 3 of them, fluffy, immovable, uninterested in your schedule. You wait, they stare, you clear your throat, they chew. You finally cluck your tongue and inch forward, gently nudging your horse into the awkward diplomatic dance that is, "Excuse me, noble yak, but I have mail." After some side-eye and a dramatic hair toss, the yaks yield. Slowly, you press on. A light snow begins to fall. Just a dusting, not enough to stick, but enough to make every step feel more cinematic. Your horse now looks like she belongs in a winter epic. You pretend you do too, even though your nose is running and your right boot squeaks. The ridge continues for miles, bending slightly westward. You pass a stone oboe, a sacred cairn ringed with prayer flags fluttering like sleepy birds. You circle it 3 times on foot, as tradition suggests, and leave behind the smoothest pebble you can find in your pocket. Historians still argue whether these religious customs were official parts of the postal system or personal acts of devotion by individual riders. Some records suggest Yam supervisors encouraged such stops to boost morale. Others say riders did it to appease mountain spirits, or simply to break the monotony. You suspect it's a little of all three. After midday, you descend slightly into a shallow saddle between peaks. Here, sheltered by ridges on either side, stands one of the more remote Yam stations, a squat stone building with smoke curling cheerfully from a pipe in the roof. You knock. This time, the door opens before your knuckles land. The woman inside is as square as the house, broad-shouldered, big hands, a laugh like rolling boulders. She claps you on the back hard enough to nearly remove your lungs, then pulls you inside before you can complain. She feeds you soup thick enough to stand a spoon in, potato, and something that might be mutton, but could also be philosophical, metaphor. Her name is Chulun, and she was a courier before she became a keeper. She points to her knees, scarred and knotted, and tells you how she once rode through a hailstorm with a broken bridle and a dislocated thumb. She keeps your horse, in a warm stable tucked behind the station. Inside, an older gelding nickers softly, a retired mount who, Chulun says, once outran a pack of wolves with mail from the Khan himself strapped to his flank. You believe her, mostly because the horse still looks smug. You sit by her hearth, as she repairs a boot with a needle the size of your finger. You chat about weather, roots, and why pine resin is the cure for absolutely everything except heartbreak. She shows you a letter she keeps under her pillow, yellowed with age. It's seal long broken. From my husband, she says. 30 years ago. He sent it from Samarkand. Never made it back. But the letter did. She doesn't read it anymore. She just holds it. That night you sleep deeply. Not because you're warm, not because you're safe, but because you feel included, part of the network. A living line drawn across a continent, stretching through storms and snow and long-forgotten footsteps. The stars glitter through the window above your cot. You dream of hoofbeats. You leave at first light, your boots barely making a sound on the stone floor as you step past Chulun's hearth. She's already up, of course, sipping a drink that smells like tea and vinegar and possibly fear. She waves without words, then disappears into the stable to check the horses. You don't say goodbye. That's not how it works here. You ride off with the cold in your teeth and her soup in your gut. The mountain trail begins to ease, unwinding from its tight spiral and giving way to wider tracks. Still high, still rough, but no longer the cliff-edge roulette of the past few days. You descend slowly into a broad valley nestled between ridgelines. It's oddly green for this height. Patches of grass wave in the breeze, and shrubs cluster near rivulets fed by melting snow. A hawk wheels overhead, solitary and regal, probably judging your posture. By noon, you spot the next station. A series of low yurts nestled beside a winding stream. Smoke rises gently from the center one, and horses graze nearby, tails flicking like metronomes. This Yam outpost is different. Here, it's not stone, buildings but felt and canvas, not permanent foundations but seasonal presence. These were the mobile Yam sites, temporary setups designed for high-altitude summer routes or emergency detours. They moved with the seasons, like nomads, which is fitting. Many were staffed by local herding families who blended their postal duties with sheep tending and the occasional flute concert at dusk. You dismount. A woman steps from the yurt, expression unreadable under her fur-lined hood. Then she smiles, a small one, but real. "Courier?" she asks. You nod. She beckons. You follow. Inside, it's warm and close. The fire crackles low. Someone's boiling milk in a bronze pot. Children shuffle in and out, whispering, giggling, pretending not to stare. You're given fermented mare's milk. You drink it. You regret that, slightly, but you drink more anyway. They ask where you're coming from, where you're going. You tell them, but they already know. Couriers talk. paths cross, stories spread. There's a certain fame in being the one who didn't freeze or fall off a ledge last season. You're shown to a bedroll beside the back wall, flanked by two slumbering sheepdogs. They don't move except to sigh in unison. You sleep, just a bit. In the late afternoon, you help mend a broken saddle strap while a teenage boy tells a story about a courier who once raced a snow leopard. You laugh. He swears it's true. Historians still argue whether wild exaggerations like this were a form of Mongol oral tradition or just really bored teenagers trying to impress passing riders. Probably both. Evening falls fast in the mountains. You share a meal of dumplings and thick soup, watching shadows stretch across the valley. One of the elders asks if you've seen any signs of bandits. You shake your head. The woman from earlier mutters something about quiet seasons being suspicious. You agree. Before bed, you help bring in the horses. One mare is favoring, her hoof, and you examine it under the flickering lamplight. Just a stone lodged deep. You remove it gently, clean the spot, whisper something soothing. Not every day is glory. Most are grit and hoof checks and feeling your spine in 12 new places. That's the point. The Mongol relay network wasn't heroic in the traditional sense. There were no epic battles here, no clashing armies, just couriers doing 1,000 small things right so that information could move. And because information moved, empires moved. You curl into your bedroll. The yurt walls rustle with wind, like a lullaby written by fabric. The fire pops once. A child whispers a story in the next room, something about a magic saddle that never got sore. You close your eyes. You believe it. At least for tonight. Morning starts with hooves, not yours. The distant drumming of another courier arriving rolls across the valley like a lazy thunder. You sit up, brushing sleep from your eyes, already picturing the stranger's dust-covered boots, the letter pouch slung across one shoulder, and the exact expression of someone who just spent a night sleeping on rocks. Sure enough, she rides into camp with a half-limping gelding and the kind of grim grin only shared among those who've both braved a snowstorm and misjudged their last dumpling. You wave. She nods. That's all the hello you need. By mid-morning, you're packed and on the trail again. The terrain drops steadily, no longer at nosebleed elevation but still high enough to make you question your lung capacity. The air gets wetter, the wind carries pine, and somewhere in the distance, you think you hear a river. You're entering the Tiger Belt. Here, the Mongol relay system relied on forest stations, tucked among thick evergreens, with bark-covered paths and more than a few deceptive mud traps. Posts here were less isolated, thanks to nearby villages and woodcutters, but more vulnerable to surprise weather and wildlife. You ride past larches and birches, their leaves rustling like gossiping ghosts. A fox darts across the trail. Later, you spot an abandoned yam hut, its roof caved in, one side overgrown. You stop briefly, peering. Inside, a single beam still holds a nail on which a saddlebag hangs, weather-stained but intact. Inside, a rolled-up letter, its seal worn to a blur. You pause. Historians still argue whether messages like this, found years, even decades after being dispatched, should count as failures or just extremely delayed deliveries. Some scholars point to these lost letters as evidence of a vast, imperfect system still more reliable than many of its contemporaries. You gently tuck the letter back inside and hang the bag on a sturdier beam, just in case the next courier sees it. That evening, you reach a station shaped like a log cabin, where pine smoke curls from every seam, and the scent of roasting roots makes your stomach rebel against its own emptiness. You're greeted by a keeper with an enormous moustache and even more enormous bear pelts draped across his shoulders. He looks like someone who arm wrestles glaciers. He speaks little, but nods a lot. Inside, you're served hot broth in a cup carved from antler. He gestures toward a stool beside the fire, and you sit, steam curling around your face like friendly fog. Here, as you sip slowly, you hear about a recent landslide that wiped out the next day's trail. It's passable, he says eventually. If you don't mind your horse thinking she's a goat. Excellent. You step outside just as twilight bleeds into the sky. The forest seems to breathe, pines creaking, leaves whispering, crickets tentatively starting their nightly symphony. You check your mount's hooves again, clean, sturdy. You whisper a promise of extra oats if she keeps her footing tomorrow. She snorts. It might be sarcasm. You wrap your cloak tighter, listening to the rustling canopy overhead. You realize something then, something quiet but heavy. You haven't seen a town in days. No temples, no markets, no yelling merchants or swarming crowds. Just the road, the mail, and the people who keep it moving. You haven't missed any of it, because this isn't loneliness. This is solitude, a slow-burning sense of purpose. The knowledge that you, in all your dusty, chapped-lip glory, are the thread that keeps the Empire's stories stitched together. You carry declarations, confessions, inventories, love letters, coded threats, and receipts for goat purchases. You carry news of wars ending and marriages beginning. Sometimes you carry nothing but a blank parchment meant to arrive with presents, not words. You are the breathing pulse between cities, and even here, where wolves howl in the distance and owls blink at you like judgmental librarians, you are not lost. You're en route, always en route. The morning begins with mud, not a splash here and there, no, this is biblical. A sloshy, sucking, boot-swallowing mess of a trail that does its best to convince you to turn back and just become a forest hermit instead. But you're a Mongol courier, well, playing the part of one. And the message pouch on your hip doesn't care about your socks. You coax your horse through the slop, each step a small gamble. She's patient, which helps. A lesser animal might have ditched you by now and joined a local herd of deer out of spite. This stretch of the route, deep in the southern taiga, is known among seasoned riders as the Squelch. Not officially, of course, but enough passed-down complaints and soggy curses have turned it into a legend. Even the official Yam records sometimes vaguely note this segment as occasionally impassable in the rainy season. Historians still argue whether the Empire's northernmost relay paths were worth the resource drain. Some point to the crucial intelligence they carried from Siberian borderlands. Others say they were mostly used to deliver fish sauce recipes and fur tax reports to bureaucrats who never read them. Still, you press on. Around midday, the forest opens into a marshy plain. Tall reeds wave in the breeze, and dragonflies dart like tiny couriers between ponds. Somewhere in the distance, cranes call to one another with the weary tones of creatures who've migrated too many times to be impressed anymore. Here, the Yam station isn't a building. It's a floating platform. Yes, floating. Tethered to poles driven deep into the muck. A wooden raft rests gently on the water, with a canvas canopy and a series of rope-pulled ferries connecting it to drier land. A single figure stands on the deck, stirring something in a copper pot. You wade out, carefully. "Courier?" the figure calls. You nod. He grins, revealing a full set of teeth and a remarkable lack of social boundaries. "Soup?" You nod again. You're not sure what kind, but after today's trek, he could serve pondweed stew, and you'd thank him. You tie off your horse under a willow tree and climb aboard. The platform sways slightly underfoot. Birds chirp in the reeds. And something, hopefully not a crocodile, though one historian claims some odd species once strayed this far north, splashes nearby. You sit, dripping and hungry. The man ladles out a bowl of soup. It's brown, vaguely meaty, and has suspicious floating bits. It is, without question, the best thing you've tasted all week. "Mail still dry?" he asks. You check. Miraculously, yes. He nods in approval. "You're better than the last one. Dropped half the pouch in a beaver nest." You eat, you dry off, and he tells you tales. A courier once rode through this swamp with a sprained ankle and 3 dislocated fingers. Another delivered urgent news of a tax evasion plot involving goose feathers. One guy, legend has it, got chased by a lovesick moose. You laugh. He doesn't. Apparently, it's a serious problem. As dust settles, he shows you to a small covered cot, near the raft's edge. The reeds rustle softly, and frogs begin their concert. The sky burns orange and purple, reflected in every puddle. You lie back, thinking. How many stations have you passed? How many hands, feet, hooves, and breathless lungs have moved these messages before you? Even here, in a swamp on a raft, guarded by a man who wears a badger hat unironically, the machine hums. You are not alone in this relay. You are one in a chain, stretched across mountains, rivers, deserts, steppes, and cities, a whisper gliding through history on the backs of riders who don't ask why, only how far and how fast. You shift under your blanket, stomach warm with soup, pouch safely beside you. Tomorrow, the trail gets drier. Probably. The raft creaks beneath you as you stir awake. Early morning mist curls above the marsh like the breath of a sleeping dragon. The courier station keeper, yes, the one with the questionable soup, is already up, humming something that might be a lullaby or just a very determined mosquito impression. You thank him, mount up, and ride out before the sun fully breaks the horizon. Ahead lies firmer ground. The marsh gives way to dense woodland again, but this time it feels less wild, more walked. The trail widens. There are wheel ruts. You pass the occasional milestone, a stack of carefully placed stones, or a post carved with official script. You've rejoined one of the Empire's arterial yam lines, where speed picks up and so do expectations. This is the final stretch before the capital region. You can feel it. Your horse feels it too. Ears perked, hooves brisk, like she knows that oats and a proper brushing are only a few days away. By mid-morning, you reach a brick station. That's right, brick. No logs, no yurts, no flappy canvas roofs. This place is permanent, grand even. A wide stable, tiled floors, and a supervisor wearing silk. He greets you with a slight bow and a glance at your mail pouch. Courier from the north. You nod. He beckons. Inside, the station smells of ink, boiled rice, and faintly cinnamon. There's a clerk transcribing messages from horseback delivery to scroll archive. He waves without looking up. This is where things are copied, checked, sometimes encoded or deciphered. Mail of a more sensitive nature rarely travels in its original form all the way. There's a process, a kind of relay within the relay. Trusted. Scribes intercept, rewrite, and forward anew. You hand over 3 letters for official transcription. One is sealed in green wax, a rare colour, likely denoting royal communication or something involving sheep quotas. Could be either, really. While you wait, you're shown to a bathhouse. Steam, soap, a place to sit where you're not moving. You sigh so deeply, a nearby cat startles. An hour later, you're in dry clothes, loaned, slightly big, and sipping tea from a porcelain cup. Real porcelain. Not wood, not horn. The cup even has a little painted crane on it, flying over a suspiciously decorative mountain. You ask about the next leg. The supervisor nods toward the road. 2 more days. You'll pass through Red Hill and the Tamarisk Gate. You've heard of both. The former is a steep incline known for sudden dust storms. The latter, a checkpoint where postal credentials are verified by men who look like they haven't smiled since the last comet. You mount up again. The horse is fresh, swapped in at the station. Sleek, lean, confident. A little too confident, maybe. She starts trotting before you're fully settled in the saddle. Show off, you mutter, gripping tighter. As you ride, the land tilts upward. Red Hill earns its name quickly. Iron-coloured soil, scattered rocks, and a wind that doesn't so much blow as launch itself sideways into your face. You squint and push forward. The hill isn't steep, but it's long. You begin to understand why so many couriers dreaded this stretch. Not for the climb, but the mental grind. Just you, the wind, and a horizon that refuses to get closer. Somewhere, halfway you pass a carved post etched with dozens of initials. Some in runic scripts, others in Chinese, Arabic, and Mongolian. It's a tradition. Leave your mark, not for ego. But as proof that you made it, you pull a small knife from your belt and carve your initials low next to a faded mark labeled TG 1249. You wonder who TG was, where they started, whether they made it to the end, or just this windy ridge. The sun drops lower as you reach the Tamarisk Gate. It looms ahead, stone archway, thick walls, and a pair of guards sharpening spears just for fun. They step forward. You present your courier token, a bone disc etched with symbols identifying your route, authority level, and the season you were dispatched. They study it. One raises an eyebrow. You're early. You grin, wind-chapped and sunburned. You're welcome. They wave you through. Beyond lies the road to the capital, wide, straight, and lined with tamarisk trees, just starting to bloom. Their scent is faint, something like licorice and wet dust. You ride beneath their canopies, the sky streaked in peach and rose above you. A few fireflies blink their early hellos. Tomorrow, you'll see the city walls. Tonight, you find an old postal hut, long retired from active service. The door hangs, open. Inside, a cot, a cold hearth, and a scroll pinned to the wall. A poem, faded but legible. It reads, "Ride soft and slow, for the wind has ears, and horses talk to shadows." You smile. You settle in. The wind listens. The road into the capital begins like a drum roll, not loud or brash, more like the gentle build-up of anticipation. Each hoofbeat draws you closer to something enormous, though no one around seems particularly impressed. Traders pass you with carts of millet and onions. A monk on foot overtakes you with the slow-motion certainty of someone who has absolutely no deadlines. A group of children scatter ahead, chasing each other with sticks and singing a song that might be about demons or dumplings. Hard to tell. Then, there it is. The outer gate of the Mongol capital rises from the dust like a mirage made of stone and ironwood. Tall, wide, unmoved by time or weather. There's a crest overhead, a snarling snow leopard cradling a wheel. Below it, guards inspect arrivals with a slowness that can only be described as institutional. You join the queue, not long. Couriers don't wait in the general line, but you still have to flash your bone token, recite your assignment route, and get sniffed. Yes, sniffed by a dog trained to detect certain inks used by rival empires. "Courier from the Eastern Tiger Line?" the official asks. You nod. He squints at your boots. "You're missing half a sole." You shrug. Hill ate it. He stamps your ledger and waves you through. Inside the city is not so much a single place as 100 woven together. Markets buzz, but gently. This early in the day, it's mostly bartering for fish and breakfast buns. Government couriers like you follow the North Axis Road, leading straight toward the central post, archive and decoding hall. Your destination is a large building shaped like a compressed dome, slate-roofed, red-tiled, with copper gutters that haven't been polished since last spring. Still, it radiates authority. At the door, a clerk greets you with a nod and a scroll case. You're the last leg. This needs hand delivery to the inner office. You raise an eyebrow. Usually things get handed off to palace intermediaries, not low-ranking couriers like yourself. But before you can object, he adds, "The letter's from a remote governor, coded. They want it read before lunch." So here you are, riding through the city's heart with a dispatch under your arm, dodging carts, chickens, and a yak with clear anger management issues. The inner office sits behind tall white walls, guarded not by soldiers, but by secretaries with exceptional posture. One looks at you, looks at the scroll and says, "Straight to the chamber." You're led down a hallway, padded with horsehair, mats. The air smells of ink, cinnamon, and bureaucracy. Finally, you enter a quiet room. A man in robes, older than the moon by the look of him, takes the scroll, breaks the seal, and reads. He doesn't speak, just nods once. "Good," he murmurs. "Thank you. That will be all." You leave. No applause, no medals, not even a cup of tea. But that's the thing about being a messenger in the Mongol Empire. If you did your job right, the message got through and no one remembered you were ever there. You retrace your steps back toward the courier compound. It's nestled near the northwest quadrant of the city, behind a garden where plum trees are just beginning to bloom. Here, riders rest. Horses are rubbed down. Sandals are repaired. A veteran courier greets you with a tired smirk. Back from the swamp. Still smell like frog. You laugh. At least I made it. Someone carved TG on into the red hill post. He nods. Tumurgan, rode during the great floods, lost a horse, kept riding. You sit, stretch, accept a bowl of rice and lentils from a cook who doesn't say a word, but always gives you a little extra. Around you, the sounds of the capital drift lazily in. Children playing, birds arguing, a street musician somewhere attempting a sad song on a 2-string fiddle. Tomorrow, you'll rest. Next week, you'll ride again. But for now, you lean back, eyes closing, the journey still buzzing faintly in your bones. You crossed marshes, deserts, mountains, hills. You dodged wolves, danced with bandits, navigated customs, survived the soup. And through it all, the mail moved. Whispers wrapped in parchment, tumbling through time and wind, with you as the vessel. Not a hero, not a name in the history books, but a vital thread in the tapestry of empire. And honestly, that's enough. Evening deepens over the capital like spilled ink. The courier compound falls into a hushed rhythm, boots removed, saddles cleaned, horses blanketed, lamps flicker on, one by one, casting golden halos across wooden beams and dusty ledges. You sit under the eaves, watching smoke curl from the cookhouse chimney, listening to someone softly pluck at a horsehead fiddle nearby. It's the end of the road for now. You think back, through river crossings and mountain passes, over frozen tundra and mosquito-ridden wetlands, through the scent of dried yak butter and the crunch of snow beneath hooves. You remember the relay stations, some grand, some barely upright, each a dot in the massive system designed to bind an empire larger than any before it. And now you're here, not just in the city, but in that quiet moment after a long ride, when even your bones feel relieved to stop moving. A boy from the station brings you a small bundle, your next assignment scroll, still sealed. Not for another 3 days, he says, as if 3 days were a lifetime. You nod, thanking him. The scroll goes unopened for now. You head toward the bathhouse. Yes, again. You've earned it. The steam wraps around you like the embrace of someone who understands you're kind of tired. You scrub away a week's worth of dust and bandit footprints. Then you wrap yourself in a blanket and curl into one of the compound's communal bunks. It creaks, comfortingly. Someone snores nearby. You smile. It's the kind of snore that says, "I crossed a river on a raft made of sheep bladders and lived to nap about it." Above you, the ceiling beams hold carved marks, initials, scratch poetry, rude drawings, the lives of couriers, recorded in the language of boredom and exhaustion. You trace one with your finger, a faded message in Mongolian script. The wind is strong, but the legs are stronger. You whisper it aloud. Fitting, isn't it? You think of all the invisible work that builds a world, of messages carried across continents, of empires connected not by armies, but by people like you, mounted on horses, bearing words that could change everything or nothing at all. Historians still argue whether the Mongol relay system was the most advanced of its time or merely the best organized. Some claim it was born of necessity, others say it was sheer genius. But anyone who's ridden its length knows this. It worked because couriers worked. Ordinary people delivering extraordinary things in small, quiet ways. There's a kind of poetry in that, a soft, footsore, slightly damp poetry, yes, but poetry all the same. You pull the blanket up to your chin. Outside, the city quiets. The wind shifts. Tomorrow, new hooves will gallop. New hands will carry scrolls from border to border. And you'll sleep. Because for tonight, The Empire can wait. Wind down, 300 words. Now, let your breathing slow. You've traveled far tonight, across marsh and mountain, over dunes and frozen trails, through the hush of history and the heartbeat of hooves on distant soil. Let that rhythm soften. Feel the weight of the saddle lift from your shoulders. Let the dust settle from your boots. The wind has faded now. The road is behind you, unspooling into memory, quiet and still. You're no longer riding, just resting. Think of the couriers who came before you, sleeping under different skies, beneath stars that never needed maps. They carried stories, just like you did tonight. Some urgent, some ridiculous, some nothing more than a forgotten grocery list from a long-dead Khan. But they mattered. Every mile mattered. And now, none of it is urgent. Not anymore. Your breath is steady. Your limbs are warm. You are surrounded by soft sounds. Maybe the rustle of tamarisk leaves in a dream. Maybe the gentle clip of hooves far off in the dark. Nothing is chasing you. Nothing is waiting for you. Just this quiet moment. This slow exhale. Let yourself drift, lighter than a scroll, calmer than a still lake at dawn. Sleep is coming. And if it's not here yet, that's all right too. You can just lie there and listen to the wind, to your breath, to the stories still echoing faintly across time, wind, to your breath, to the stories still echoing faintly across time,